My general supposition
Really
is that TikTok is not a source. Like if you're gonna come with a TikTok, then you need to have one additional source to back up your TikTok. That's all I'm saying.
If your source is a vertical video, no, that's not a real source.
That's not a real citation.
Please open the show with that.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this and totally redeem yourself.
Yo, what's up, Internet? Welcome back to another episode of Three Averagely Intelligent Dudes discussing dangerous ideas. And today we got some dangerous ones for you, man. Really excited to be back in the house. I'm in the house, and then
I am in a video call. Yeah. You have lost me into the ether. This is episode 1. Welcome back, guys.
And
we invented time travel.
Yeah, we're still in the COVID shuffle. John does not have COVID. I am fresh out of quarantine. I'm probably about 1 day, maybe 1.5 day eligible to be out of quarantine. And Mac may or may not
have COVID.
Have it.
We'll let Mac speak to that.
Yeah.
Well, because I got the negative test and everything, and I felt fine. But yesterday and today, I was kind of feeling sniffly, and I was like, I don't know if I should be in the same room with John. Talking a lot of hot virus breath for the next 3 hours.
Yeah,
back
and forth.
just because, I'm trying to look out for him and his peoples and
Appreciate
everything.
That.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? Maybe we should. And me and Rod were thinking about okay, well, logistically, should we have John come into the room and then me and Rod be both in our rooms, and then John
just
in
me
the
with
studio.
the 2 microphones.
Just you alone.
I'll just look at it when you guys talk.
But then we decided it'd probably be easier to just have John zoom in from his house, so he didn't even have to come over here. So now you see John is in the Zoom call, and we're here. I'm gonna go schedule another test for whenever I can, as soon as I can, I guess. But yeah, it's not so bad. I mean, it's sniffles.
See what happens. It might not, but
I don't really get the sniffles that
yeah,
often.
Right. So I was like, miraculously, all of a sudden you have allergies.
So it's just some sinusy stuff, and I was like, well, just to be sure.
Hey, but I mean, I feel like we're doing about as good managing it here in our household as the CDC is doing to manage it for the country. I mean,
exactly.
We're just kind of
refer to last episode. We're ever changing, shifted. It's a fluid situation.
You know what I mean? I'm like, he could not have it and just get it from being in the room with me now. We don't know.
I was thinking if you got over it, but then I get it and then give it back to you, we could be on some sort of weird loop where we're perfectly lined up in our diagnoses where we just keep giving it back and forth to each other.
Who knows?
Because apparently you can just get this shit all the time. Doesn't matter if you're vaccinated.
Heard that.
Yeah. So either way,
vaccine has dropped to 84% effectiveness, and antibodies, supposedly, if you get natural antibodies, they only last 6 months. Who knows, man?
Jesus. So like you could be like, Rod gets it, mutates it, gives it to Mac. He mutates it. It goes back to Rod. Now you're just mutating
variant.
back and forth. Jesus Christ, man.
But if you want more updates,
we're gonna get the sticker again.
or more,
click the sticker.
Ideas, look, watch this episode right. But yeah, so today, first thing I want to talk about, I'm kind of bringing the first topic today. I got an interesting topic, guys. I really want to talk about motherfucking maybe one of the most prolific artists of our time.
A man on my Mount Rushmore. If
he
you
was
refer back
on
to
your
that
Rushmore?
episode, another callback.
Good callback.
Or maybe he's just a guy with serious mental health issues that we're not really diagnosing properly or seeing properly. But today I'm talking about Kanye West, man.
Can it be both? Can he be a really prolific, mentally disabled artist?
We very well might. That very well might be the situation.
I think that might.
We're gonna diagnose him today.
We're gonna figure it out on this episode of
Back
Dangerous
to 3.
Ideas.
Back to 3 psychiatrists discussing Kanye. It's funny.
No. Okay, so look, Donda's dropping, right? It's what
we're hoping that
supposedly, allegedly, Donda will drop.
Donda will drop. Let's not act like
I just want to
we're new to this.
I mean, but yeah, one day Yandi was gonna drop someday. You know what I'm saying?
That's
And,
true.
like,
And
these
that one
other,
never came.
you know what I'm saying? Like
That one
there's
never
ones that
came.
never came. You know what I'm saying?
It's true. It's true. So yeah, the internet's all a buzz about. Because I mean, if there's one thing this dude knows how to do, he knows how to faint dropping an album. You know what I mean? Like, he's really good at getting you hyped up at the potential of him dropping an album. And so he's been doing these listening parties for Donda. And have you guys seen some of the videos and images coming out of these things?
I have. I've been following closely.
Yeah.
I haven't. I'm not the biggest Kanye West fan. Like, I like Kanye West and I like some of his music and stuff. And,
Yeah.
But I don't really follow his career or anything, so I haven't seen any. I remember you telling me about it. You were like, yo, he was in the, what was it, the Atlanta Falcons Stadium or something like that?
So yeah, he's
Correct.
is it the Falcons? Okay, I just know
It was that was the story. Is the stadium in Atlanta, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium? I think it is?
Mercedes-Benz Stadium, yeah. So he's living here.
Doesn't he have like a whole fucking farm in Iowa? Why does he have to lock
In
himself
Wyoming.
away? Whatever. Like,
Yeah.
I just thought that
living here.
was so weird. Like, I saw the thing where it was like, oh, Kanye West posts a picture of his secluded little isolation room in the stadium, and I was like, isn't that why he moved to that big farm, so that he could get away from everybody?
So he could be in that.
Now is there like a bunch of people there?
But see,
I don't
that's what I'm
understand.
talking about. This man's really good at pitching it, you know? Just real quick, couldn't move on without stopping here. We're offering Pfizer vaccines for anybody in attendance tonight. Starting with rows B through H. Come on down. You've won yourself a free vaccine. So, dang, I wish I would have brought some sources that are already lined up for the Donda thing. I thought I'd be able to just Google Donda and then I would see like a bunch of cool images, but this website Billboard is like completely unusable. So yeah, he's
Trash website.
Yeah, it's
That's
just
true.
like hit me with
That's
like a
true.
million pop-ups that I just couldn't.
That's how websites are now these days. Like, every time I try to go to read an article, it's like, blue, blue, blue,
Yeah,
sign up for our
you know,
newsletter and do this. And I'm like, yo, just give me the fucking, I'll let you know if I thought it was good enough to sign up.
So, dude, it's crazy though because he's in the stadium, right? So he invites everybody for a listening party. I think you have to pay for tickets and stuff, right? And it ended up being like a whole big show. He's done 2 of them. Was the red jacket? Was that the first one or the second one?
That was the first one.
Okay, that
the
was
second
the-
one where he's in the black getup and
Yeah.
he floats
Yeah.
is crazy
It's
because
nuts.
that's the one that happened like 2 or 3 days ago. I'm not sure what stadium that was in.
Right.
but
Same
I saw,
stadium.
Like
He's still there.
I saw that on Twitter, like that video of him just floating, going viral because it's
Yeah.
like, you know, he's just a crane is lifting Kanye up and he's just like
Hundreds
floating
of
in
feet.
these lights,
like thousands of feet in the air.
it's artistry.
Thousands
yeah.
of feet?
Hundreds of
Who
feet.
knows?
But it was
Hundreds.
hundreds. It's been quoted as hundreds of feet. Okay. But yeah, it was really. I mean, it was really angelic. I mean, and that's what really started to hit me. I'm like, man, this dude's just such a good visual artist. You know, like he does and says things, and the way he presents everything is in a way to make you kind of ask questions. You know, like that's just what he does really well. You can't help but just question everything he does, which I think is a superpower and a detriment, you know, because some things he does, like, we constantly have to question everything. Like, sometimes he just tries to do normal things, and I'm like, are you being normal or are you just being weird? You know, like, what's going on with you? You know? Like, what's going on with
It's hard to tell
I
when
think he's
Kanye West is being normal.
you? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, you just don't
I think
really-
he's branded this whole like I'm gonna be different, and it's almost like a satire, and it's just great, man. Like he's such a like watching that David Letterman thing that you sourced to me was like a really good an alternative angle where you see Kanye playing a crowd talking to David Letterman, who I'm not even sure if he respects or really fucks with David Letterman. You can just see the conversation, how it's different from like him and Joe Rogan,
Right.
where he's like way more like thoughtful and in the sense of like I am a spiritual man who's going to run for president. Where
Yeah.
in this David Letterman one, he's like, yo, I just dropped yay.
Yeah. No, I mean,
you know,
he
I've been off my
seems-
medicine for 8 months.
Right.
So it's like you see these different characters. He's like a method actor.
Right.
He's like this, I don't know, man, larger than life character.
Right. You know, like in this one, he talks like they were saying like a lot of the lyrics are just talking about his divorce with Kim and stuff and like all that. And one of the big headlines was Kanye says Kim is still in love with him because he raps like, you came here tonight to show you were still in love with me. Like, because Kim came to the second listening party.
Yeah. Did you see her crazy getup too?
Did you
She
see
tweeted,
her
like,
crazy
the picture
getup?
of her crazy getup?
She's wearing
and
a
then-
full Balenciaga gimp suit. It's
Yeah, it's pretty
hard.
wild.
Like I think
Yeah,
we saw it
it's-
when I pulled it up the first time. There it is. Like head
That's
to
what she
toe
was wearing?
with the mask and everything.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like full tights.
To
Yeah,
the
what's up with
newest
these-
listening party.
What's up with these masks now? Like, why is like I see he's wearing like he looks like
He
he's
wore
about
a
to
mask.
go rob somebody.
He
He
wore a
did the
mask?
same thing when he came to the Big 3 games.
Oh,
he
here
was
it is.
wearing like this giant fucking
Here's
like
the one.
Montclair jacket and a balaclava.
Yeah.
And I was like, why are you wearing that? It must be 100 degrees in that fucking stadium.
Dude, that's what everybody's been talking about. Like in the sense of
God
okay, so
damn.
Balenciaga and him, the guy who created Balenciaga and him are pretty good friends, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like I guess Kanye kind of put him on. Really, it's like what I gathered from some of my research, and so a lot of the stuff they're wearing is like this is a Balenciaga jacket, like Kim's whole outfit's Balenciaga. They did the mask with the gimp suit, but they were saying that a lot of these are themes of like protection and stuff. Like he's wearing, and a lot of the dancers in this are wearing Donda bulletproof vests. Like they're bulletproof vests that say Donda, and the masks and stuff. It's all about this these tropes of like protection, and then I don't know, weird Kanye stuff too.
Yeah, he looks like
Protection.
Koosh Ball. I like his Koosh Ball jacket.
Yeah. But nonetheless, it's very interesting. I don't really know what's going on with his relationship and stuff right now. I know he's getting a divorce, but he came out and like this is the set that he used too. Like the set was just a mattress in the middle of the arena with like some shoes and like him. And did he actually sing or anything? Did anybody actually hear him perform, or did he just kind of walk around?
He like listens, I think.
Cool.
Like that's in the first one, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, when he was in the orange getup.
Yeah.
He just like walked around and kind of danced and
Yeah. Did
listened
some-
to his music. Like
Mhm.
from
Yeah.
what I understand, that seems cool. And this one, he apparently floated at some point.
He
so-
did. So it's a lot of the same. He like takes off some of the garments and stuff, walks around. He ends up pulling up the comforter, that black comforter, and it's like a floor length puffer jacket, and he's just like rocking it. There's a lot of fashion mixed in with this, but then at the end, the whole stadium turns like red, and then fire starts coming out in the screens, and then it turns into like this like crowd of people around him, like a crowd of people come around him, and then he says some stuff, plays his last single, which is the No Child Left Behind or whatever, and then he just starts like ascending, like straight Christ-like with the whole just like, "Ah," and then he like leaves, like he just ascends out of the stadium, and then that was like
Just out the goddamn
out the roof, I guess.
Oh
yeah.
wow, okay.
But so it's all fascinating, man. It's all interesting. Like you said, he locks himself. He's been doing live streams for this whole thing of him like finishing the album. He did the first listening party. It was July 22nd, no album, which you should have known. And then 6th, and then it was supposed to be the 8th, and then the 9th. So who knows when it's actually going to drop? But
Yeah, who knows?
He's been locked in here this whole time though. From the first listening party, stayed for the next couple weeks, now to this next listening party, and he's just been locked in here finishing the album. So anyways, I mean, all of this was just like, okay, cool. It's just Kanye being Kanye, right? Like just weird, bizarre, not really kind of explaining what he's doing, but it's like good art. You just got to watch it and try and infer whatever you think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the layers to it. It's this
Right.
incredibly artful like experience, but he's also got the layer of like commercially he's about to drop an album and he's
Right.
like holding it back. He's like there's tons of stuff on Instagram stories and things where he's always got dry erase boards with his track lists.
Right.
And there's working track lists.
Oh, yeah.
And then like people get copies of these track lists. So like a lot of the things that I see in my little Twitter feed is like people talking about the track list of Donda. What could it possibly be? He's got people new producers flying into this Mercedes-Benz Stadium to work on new songs where it's like, damn, now he's getting features. He is still releasing songs. He was just on a Pop Smoke song that came out. That's I thought he killed it.
Yeah.
And
And
it's good.
He actually, from both like the first listening party to the second listening party, it had a different track order, and then he put the album up for pre-order, but then it was just like 20 unlisted tracks or something like that. So it's an interesting creative process, for sure, like a different creative process than probably any other artist.
And a commercial endeavor that's going to make him quite
Yeah.
a bit of money because everybody's hyped for it.
Right. I always wondered if this stuff works, like if keeping people strung along under, like, is this a better strategy than just being like, it comes out on the 6th and then dropping it on the 6th and like hyping that up and then like capitalizing on that hype? because it almost feels like you lose a lot of people too. You know what I mean? Like somebody who, like for me, if I hear about it, but your album's not coming out for another 3-4 days, like I'm already off it. You know, because like I'm not.
But if you think about Kanye as a trope, like you were saying, it's like he's the trope of the tortured artist. So it's like it's like we see, oh, he's stringing us along, or he's got this big master plan. He might just be like freaking out and changing things, and you know, I mean, who knows? Like this is Kanye. Like this man.
Yeah, it could be more like the Joker thing where he's talking about, do I really look like a guy with a plan?
Do I really look like a guy with a plan?
Right.
Even though you know that the Joker has a plan, but
huge point. Huge point.
It's like you can't tell if he's doing it as a plan or if he's doing it because he's crazy, or if he's making you think that he's crazy, but it's really all part of his plan.
You know, it's very interesting.
Meta.
And
it's very meta.
It's very meta, and I'm glad that that's where I really wanted to take this conversation. In the end, I was like, I started thinking about Kanye and all these crazy things that he's done over his long career. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, we've all got our favorite Kanye headlines, and like you were even explaining, John, like you don't really know what kind of Kanye you're gonna get. I watched the Letterman thing, and you know, he in the opening, even Letterman's like,
we don't know how this is gonna go,
he's
folks.
Like, all right, I'm scared.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
you have a
scared.
live audience. That's the difference. One of them, you have a stream, obviously, of a live audience, and then people on YouTube watching it later, which is different because you're just in a room with Jamie Vernon and Joe Rogan, like two dudes. You know, it's 3 averagely intelligent dudes. You know,
Yeah.
but. You know, if you go to the David Letterman one, because like I just watched that last night for reference. I haven't seen the Joe Rogan podcast in a while.
Wow. Yeah.
But man, different energy,
Just
completely. Man. Just a different, completely different, man.
Right? And so in there, he talks about so many different. The Letterman's a great source to for this conversation because you do feel like you're getting normal Kanye in that whole thing. Yeah, and he breaks down a lot of the stuff that gets talked about, you know, about him, but from his point of view. And so I was really just fascinated by it because, you know, I just really started asking myself that question, like, is he, like, when do you know if people are just pretending or playing things up, or if they're actually like suffering some type of mental health episode? You know, I also watched this other documentary called Team Foxcatcher. Y'all seen it on Netflix?
I know the story,
Yeah.
and I know that there's a great movie with Steve Carell, but I have not seen the documentary or the movie. But I know the
movie
story.
with Steve Carell.
Yes, he plays. I believe the man who gets. It's like the.
John
we don't want to
DuPont.
spoil.
Yeah,
I guess
don't
spoil. You know,
spoil
whatever.
it. You almost did right there. You're like the man who.
Yeah.
I
plays the guy.
One of the main characters.
Spoil it. I was gonna.
It's got Channing Tatum too. I think
I
it's
mean,
Channing
it's
Tatum and Steve
an
Carell.
old movie and an old documentary.
I'm
It's been up
definitely
there for a while.
I'm definitely spoiling the docu. So like, just letting y'all know right now.
Spoiler alerts.
I'm
Yeah, click ahead.
spoiling the docu by telling you what the story is. Right. So it's this rich famous guy. His name not famous, but this rich guy, a DuPont. Right. Like
We'll call him Steve Carell. No,
DuPont family. The DuPont family is like top 20 richest families in America.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oil, where they made their money.
Chemical plants actually, or something like that. So, nonetheless,
They do a lot of
they got
stuff.
like $14 billion or something spread out amongst like a bunch of different relatives. Well, this one guy in Delaware, he was one of the heirs of this estate. He ends up starting to sponsor the United States Olympic wrestling team, right? He brings them all to his huge mega like estate, builds them a facility to practice in, gives them all houses to live. So he's got like the whole Olympic wrestling team like living on his property. Now, I'm not going to go into the details because it's such a fascinating docu. Like I don't want to spoil it in that sense. Like but the whole punchline, I guess, is he ends up killing one of these wrestlers, right? Because he's pretty mentally unstable, as you find out throughout the docu.
Killing isn't like he murdered him.
He shoots him. Pow.
He shoots him.
Pow.
Pow.
Oh.
Yes.
Pow.
I thought you were gonna say like, oh, you know, they were doing some shit in the
he
like
just
weight room or
accidentally-
something, like an accident. But when you say kill, you mean like he murdered
He
him.
murdered him.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
ends up going to prison. And so like the story to getting there is wild, but it's this interesting thing because throughout the whole thing, they all see it coming, right? They're all like, yeah, no, he's a weird guy. Like he be doing some really strange things. One of the things he did, he drove his car into the lake, right? Then they give him a new car. Like the
Intentionally drove his car into
drove his car into the lake. But at first they thought, oh, maybe he actually fucked up and accidentally. They give him another brand new Lincoln, like a rental, like while he's like getting his next car. The very next day, he gets like the director of wrestling in the back seat and then drives it into the lake again. What the fuck? Like the next day.
So yeah, erratic behavior. It sounds very
okay, got it.
Just strangely, but the funny or the interesting thing about it is nobody questions it, right? Everybody just kind of goes with the flow on it and just kind of appeases because this man is like financially holding up
bankroll.
He's bankroll,
Yeah,
right?
what are you gonna
And
say
then-
something to the bankroll guy?
You're not gonna say nothing to the finance
He
guy.
bought you a fucking house. You're like, he tried to kill me by driving me into a lake once.
Hey,
but
that's,
you know,
that's
whatever.
just John.
He's
you know?
just weird like
That's-
that.
he's just weird like that.
Yeah,
Mr.
right?
DuPont just
That's
be
so
driving
funny,
you
though,
into the
'cause
lake sometimes.
If it was like some, towel boy that just worked at the facilities, everybody like, yo, you gotta get this kid out of here.
Fucking outta here. This
Drove my
motherfucker's
car to a lake.
Dangerous. Like he need to go.
But you can't do that with the guy with the money.
Bro, it gets weirder. He damn, I don't want to give away too much because it gets weirder. But the point is it culminates in this death and then everybody has to stop back and be like, yeah, maybe we should have distanced ourselves. You know what I mean? Like we saw this coming.
We should have said something.
Yeah, we should have said something. We should have done something. We should have.
We saw something and we didn't say something.
anything because we wanted the money. And it's thought a lot about how I've seen things go down with Kanye. And how Kanye even admits in that Letterman thing, you saw it too, John, where he's like, sometimes the crazy thing works for me because I can say and do whatever the fuck I want to, and then people are like, he's just crazy. That's just crazy Kanye for you. And it's weird how if you are somebody of status or wealth, but then you're suffering from these mental health disorders that people don't, I don't want to say question you, but they don't care. Like they don't think about it. They just like let you go, essentially. It almost becomes like a joke. Or something to poke fun at.
Yeah, like when he runs into TMZ and starts talking crazy, it's like
Right.
it's just clicks. It's just like people watching and
Right.
like judging Kanye. He's crazy. Look at the crazy thing he said. He's wearing a MAGA hat. Crazy Kanye.
Right.
And he makes a point in that David Letterman thing where it's like, he's like. And he said it in his music before. Like, he says it over and over. He says shit like, say the thing that you don't want to say out loud.
Right.
Just to see how it sounds.
Right.
It's like, this isn't a new concept. Kanye's not creating this concept, but he's like, he embodies that kind of shit where he's just like, do the thing that scares you.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about that in Letterman too. He talks about fear and love being the only two buttons in the game of life, So it's like, he knows what he's talking about.
He knows what he's
talks
talking
about a lot of the shit that we talk about.
Right. Like he's.
If you watch the Joe Rogan thing too, they don't necessarily talk about his DMT trip, but Kanye's said he's done DMT before, and like he said
Surprising
died and
Rogan
lived again on
didn't bring
DMT. That's the meme. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like surprised Rogan didn't want to talk about that, huh? No, but it that's what makes it even harder to decipher with Kanye's particularly, right? Is that he talks about things that would already and do things that he challenges the status quo already, and then so he's also diagnosed with bipolar. So let's just talk about that, right? Like he was diagnosed in 2017 with having bipolar personality disorder or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. Identity disorder. So he has that like as an actual like thing, but people can't really tell the difference between is he just trying to be eccentric and weird or is he having like an episode, And I think that is what makes it an interesting conversation because you don't really know. Really know.
Here's something interesting that maybe you guys haven't thought of. I'm not saying he did, but it's quite possible that Kanye could have gotten that doctor to diagnose him to further murky the waters. If this is some sort of planned eccentricness or whatever, you could easily, as a Kanye West, pay a doctor to diagnose you bipolar.
100%.
Because 2017, that seems pretty late to the game to be diagnosing Kanye West as bipolar. I mean, I don't know if that's maybe he was mature enough to go see a doctor about it then. And this is all conjecture. I'm not saying that Kanye West did this. I don't think he did.
You don't know.
But when you were talking about it, I was like, 2017? I thought that he was diagnosed with that
As a
way
child or
before
something.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like,
I thought the same.
But I mean, that's pretty late to the game,
dude.
Well, here's an angle that kind of fits in with that too. Is it the Andy Kaufman angle? You know, is it like he is when he makes this point to David Letterman again? We keep bringing this up. I'd love if people checked it out on Netflix.
Yeah, you guys got to watch it.
It was
We
really
can't show it.
interesting.
Yeah, we can't put it up here.
There's a
You
great
gotta watch it.
piece where Kanye mentions Andy Kaufman. Andy Kaufman was a comedian that used to go on the Late Show or Tonight Show with David Letterman. So Letterman knew Andy Kaufman. And there's a movie with Jim Carrey about Andy Kaufman. Great character. But what he did was like, he didn't just act out the crazy, eccentric thing, this, you know, crazy episodic character. He would actually do it. So when he wanted to like be a wrestler, he would just went and was a wrestler, you know, and started acting like a wrestler. And it was like an act, but it was who he was. He was this eccentric guy who was a comedian who would embody all these different things.
Right.
That's very Kanye. That's very, you know, like someone who has normal mental health would probably not do something like that. They wouldn't decide like, okay, my comedic joke is I'm going to be a bully who is a wrestler who only wrestles women, and I'm going to
Right.
beat him up.
Right. You know what I mean?
And then he actually did that.
and
And it was like a thing. Like he went into fucking actual crowds of people
Right.
and beat these ladies up, but
Yeah.
didn't like hurt them, but like wrestled them like Jerry Lawler style. And it's like that he did it for. Did he do it for comedy? Did he do it because he got some?
Is it
he some
sarcastic,
sick crazy
or-
person? Is it sorry? Is it satire? What
Yeah,
is it?
right.
Maybe he just wanted to beat
It
up
is
women.
his own thing. It's this one unique artistic expression of comedy to make
Yeah.
you laugh. And with Kanye, it's whatever his, I don't know what his end result is, but he's being Kanye and we're looking at it.
Yeah, because that's one thing that Kanye does talk about mostly in what I saw on too. Is he was like, you know, I'm really about being just who you are, like being just honest expression of yourself, like who yourself is, you know. And he talks about like when he's wilding out or just speaking his mind, like that's just you know who he is, you know. And so it's like I don't know if he's playing it up, but back to your point where you're talking about is he actually diagnosed or is he Andy Kaufman us type situation? Because he even quotes that as like one of his influences. You know, he did say that he likes to take on that Andy Kaufman kind of persona to protect himself from media and stuff like that. So it's like, is he doing that or not? You know, it's so hard to tell, but he opens up about it very candidly and honestly in the Letterman thing. And he talks about what it feels like to be kind of going through an episode and how, more importantly, how people treat him when he's going through episodes, you know? And I thought it was super fascinating because I've seen this happen before too, where we have another friend of ours, I'm not going to mention just because I don't know how much they want us to be putting this type of business out, but they were diagnosed at a younger age with bipolar, but it doesn't seem to affect them as much anymore. And so I wondered, is this a type of diagnosis that can come and go? Like, you know, can you just develop bipolar disorder in a stage or state in your life, you know, and then maybe
Or just,
cure
you know,
yourself of it,
Kind of come to the realization. Is also an
or
idea,
do you just come to the realization? But
yeah.
he seems to not be dealing with as many symptoms as, I mean, actually could probably say I've experienced this person being kind of bipolar sometimes. So I don't know, but Kanye explains it as being like feeling like he's ramping up, right? Like he's like I start to ramp up, and when I start to ramp up, I like I get to this high place. He says like he feels this like deep connection with like a universe or like an energy, but I guess sometimes that can ramp up to a point where he gets kind of like he kind of loses control of it. Right. And I was like, wow, that's really fascinating. Because even when we were talking, John, you sent me this where he has this thing that he did in, when was this?
2016,
where he goes on this entire rant in the middle of his tour
performance.
Yeah, he's in the middle of a performance.
It's not actually. I don't even know if it's middle. I think it's like really early
Like
on in the
15
performance, and
minutes
then he runs
into
off stage after it.
Yeah, it's like 15, 20 minutes in, right? Exactly. And so it's like he's just getting started, and one of the songs is about to play, and he's like, "Man, stop that!" And he just goes on this rant. Hey, radio, fuck you. Radio, fuck you. Y'all don't know. Y'all don't want to lose again. And he just starts ranting about all types of different issues.
Name drops
Dropping people, putting out people's business and stuff. But I noticed that he keeps saying one thing in here, right? And he's like, oh yeah, the vibes are back. Right? He keeps saying like, oh, the vibes are back. Hold on, where does he say that at?
He says it a couple times, and then at the very end again.
Yeah,
he's talking about Cuddy and stuff too. He keeps saying the vibes are back, and
it seems like he's like, when people be like, yeah, that's right, I'm back on my bullshit. I'm back on my bullshit, is what it sounds like. But then at the same time, when I heard him explain it about this idea of ramping up, I'm like, maybe that's what he's like. He's like, oh shit, the vibes are back. Like, like I'm ramping up. Like my shit's about to, I'm about to go off on my shit. And he just goes on this extremely long rant that I will post it in the
what is this dude talking about?
Right?
This is the craziest.
Right?
Like,
it gets crazier too. He starts talking about DJ Khaled. He's like, DJ Khaled, don't kill me.
Yeah,
he's like, I know you got starts talking about Jay-Z, and he's like, Jay-Z, don't kill me, please, don't kill me.
He's like, I know y'all got them hitters out there and stuff. He talks about that as like one of the symptoms being too is you get really paranoid, right? You get really like you start thinking that people are out to get you, which I noticed that in the Foxcatcher thing. That was one of his symptoms too, and one of the things that people would say, like he would really like film nothing, like just the woods around his property, and he started like sometimes would get really like concerned that the wrestlers and stuff were like out to get him and stuff, and we're gonna like turn against him and shit like that. That's why he ends up ultimately killing this person, right? And so I'm like, damn, that's sketch, because like, I mean, what if, I'm just speculating, but just like, what if Kanye goes that way one day? Like, because Kanye has been known to show that type of paranoia too, right?
Yes.
They're trying to get me.
In particular.
They're trying to lock me up. My wife's trying to, like.
Great point, dude. Crazy Kanye tweets that were coming out within the past year or two, or even like after this time when he got back on Twitter, when he was saying like, "Get Out" is the movie is based on my life.
Right?
Kim is gonna send the
the people to lock me up and stuff, and like and everybody's
crazy.
Like, "Yo, chill," and then Kim's over here like, "Nah, it's not like that," But you can definitely see, and then even when they talked about this guy in the Foxcatcher, I hate to keep trying to make parallels to Kanye and this guy, but they seem like they suffer from the same type of episodic type mania, because the guy would be chilling sometimes. Sometimes people are like, yo, sometimes John was like a great guy, but then there's the other times like you just didn't know which John you were gonna get. Sometimes it would be the other DuPont who was like, there's aliens in the forest and they're coming to get me type shit, And it's just very interesting. And I saw this article that was brought up that really brought this home for me, man. Really brought this home and what I really want to talk about, because when I started this, like I got to admit that I was one of those like, kind of crazy Kanye guys, right? Like you just kind of write them off or make them a joke, it's funny. He goes in TMZ and he's wilding out, or he's wilding out on Twitter.
The quote, the crazy quote, or the crazy tweet. Yeah.
Right, the tweet, right? And it just becomes this thing where it's like, you see how weird these, celebrities are. But here's a man who's actually suffering from a diagnosed mental disorder, and our first response, maybe because he's a celebrity, is to make fun of them. And that's strange. And so this article talks about the whole how we kind of treat people with mental disorders and things like that, and how we are as a society feel about that. Some Kanye talks about a lot in the Letterman thing too. Saying like a lot of people in our society today, they say that speak up about your mental health disorders, like tell us if you're suffering from things, so that way we can make fun of you, to your face, or lock you up, or you know what I mean.
Well, I think it's another example of people. It's to me, a lot of that seems like another example, just based off of what people end up doing when people do speak out about it. It always looks like, you don't usually apologize or confess for the other person. You do it for yourself. You do it to make, because you feel guilty or whatever. So you apologize and it makes you feel good, and then everything's good. And you feel like, oh, well, I apologize to them. And you think it's the apology and them being like righted that makes you feel good, but really it's just getting it off your chest. And I think it's kind of a similar scenario when people say, open up about your mental illnesses. Like they like the idea that they're giving that opportunity to people, but let somebody grab him and be like, you know what, I'm glad you said that because I wanted to talk to you about it. They'd be like, ooh, you know, I actually got a meeting I got to go to right now. You know, it reminds me of a scene from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where they go over there to get like a basketball to Charlie's apartment. And he's like, oh yeah, you know, like he kind of brings up that he's got cancer. And they're like, oh man, like Dennis is like, oh man, that sucks, you know? And then like, he's like, yeah, you know, like, I'm just glad that we can talk about it. And he's like, yeah, man, we can always talk about it. And he's like, yeah, so it starts off and I'm starting to get some headaches or whatever. And he's like, ooh, you want to talk about it right now? I got people waiting for me at the basketball.
Right. No, it's like
and it's like, yeah, like, we want to say to you that we're here to listen, but we don't actually want to listen
because it requires a sacrifice.
Because it requires a lot of time and energy, and you have to like invest a lot of emotional stuff into it. And it's like, you know, a lot of people don't really want to do that. They just want to pretend like they do that to feel better.
It's true. Because you got Kanye here, and like he's like in the Letterman thing, he talks about like, you know, like imagine like you have a sprained ankle. You know, he's like having this type of disorder is like having a sprained brain. And instead of, like, if you saw somebody walking around on crutches with a sprained ankle, you wouldn't just go, like, lay all your weight down on them and be like, ha-ha, yeah, sprained ankle, huh? But he's like, that's kind of what you do, though, when he's, using him himself as an example, he's going through these manic episodes of bipolar disorder, and everybody just kind of makes it worse. You know, like they go in and they like accuse him, and he talks about like getting ripped from his family. When you're going through these episodes, he's like, you don't trust anybody. Like you do start to like create like this kind of paranoia. And he's like, the worst thing you could do is take those people away from everybody that they know. But that's like the first step that they'll do is they'll come and they'll just snatch you up, separate you from everybody that you know and love, making it worse. You know, here's a man, he's almost crying out for help, you know, in a scenario, and he's met with just media lashings. You know what I mean? And it's very
he proved his point on that Letterman thing because he's bringing things up and people are clapping for them. You know, like he's and then he brings up the 13th Amendment. He starts yelling at the crowd. And he's like 13th Amendment, you know, like allows slavery and you know, like this and that and blah. And they're just like nobody's clapping. He's like, oh, you ain't gonna clap for that. And it was like he really, because he's crazy Kanye. If he talks about certain things, like there's a stigma on him because like anybody who's like, you know, got some serious mental health, if they're a paranoid schizophrenic and they start talking about something, you know, you're just going to be like, oh, crazy John DuPont.
Right. Yeah, exactly, right?
When the NSA really is in your trees.
Right?
You know?
He really is bringing up a valid
speaking,
point, right? But then you're like, oh, that's just paranoia speaking. It's really interesting because of just how that goes down and, like, his dichotomy particularly because he is super philosophical, right? So the man is really making some very valid, serious points, but then they get lost in some of the manic episodes too. Like, you know, it makes it easy to write off all the things that he's saying that could very well be positive or true, you know? It's been interesting because did you notice, John, in that thing where he, when he talks about coming off of medication for his bipolarness and everybody claps. Right? He's like, you know, I've been able to get off medication in the last couple months. And everybody's like, yeah. And he's like, all right, well,
clap for it.
Yeah. And he's like, well, actually, I wouldn't clap for that. You know, he's like, that's just, you know, how it's progressed for me. But he's like, but there's some people out here who literally cannot function without the medicine. Yeah. So it's
he made a great point about luxury. Like he's got like the luxury version of mental health where like he's rich enough to afford these things and it's not as serious to where he actually needs that medicine all the time when there are people who are heavily medicated just to be regular.
Right.
Or any semblance of normalcy.
Yeah. I feel like prescription drugs kind of have I think a lot of people in modern society look at them in the same way that they kind of look at religion. You know, like it got really popular to like bash on religion. And rightly so. I mean, religion's done a lot of really fucked up shit over the years, but it also like if you do it right, it provides a lot of really good benefits to people. Like, and it provides structure for people and their families and stuff like that. Like there is a use for it if you use it right, just like any tool. And the same is true for medication. Like some medication is like really good, and it's not like, you know, I think Jordan Peterson talks about this all the time where he says, you know, like people taking antidepressants isn't like a bad thing. Like if like the antidepressants help you, then it's a good thing, and it's awesome that you have them and that we've created these drugs for people. But because of the way that prescription drugs have been
caught a bad rap.
Yeah, they've caught a bad rap. And so now it's like anytime you can say like, oh, I'm off my medication, people are like, yeah, good for you. Or if you say like, ooh, I stepped away from my religion, people are like, yeah, good for you. But it's not bad inherently.
It could be a detriment.
Yeah. It could be a use, but it was fascinating because so he goes on, he talks about all these different like symptoms and things, and this article, like I said, was just like a lashing of just like how like we talk about destigmatizing mental health and illness and stuff like that, but when you actually see people out in the world, Britney Spears, like look how when she was really going through some things and was obviously suffering, and she's talked about it now openly that she was suffering like in her mental state, but the media just sensationalized it, like just for the headlines, you know what I mean, just so everybody could laugh and be like, ha, look how crazy Britney Spears is. And it's like, are we trying to become a society that is trying to support people with these problems, or are we not, And like, it just got me thinking, because I think a lot, really, it's not even like that. It's like most of the time when we say we want you to talk about your mental health, we want us to, you tell us if you're feeling bad, right? But we haven't really opened the lane for these people that have serious disorders like identity and post-traumatic stress disorders and bipolar type things where, it can get very dicey. Kanye talks about as a kid, he's like, maybe a couple, like 100 years ago, you might just take your uncle and like lock him up in the attic. You know what I mean? And just be like, oh yeah, don't go upstairs. Crazy Uncle Bob's up there. Yeah. And so it's interesting that we do have a lot of these crazy Uncle Bobs just like running around town.
Well, I mean, I think that because of how advanced, if you will, we are with like technology, people forget that we're like, society is a very new technology. Back in the day, like if you go back far enough, they just killed Uncle Bob. Oh, they would just murder you. Yeah. Like they were like, whoa, this dude's flipping the fuck out, gotta kill him.
Or then
that went into, we're gonna lock them up,
paddy wagon.
And then that went into, okay, we're gonna put them in a locked up place with doctors around them. And then for some reason that became like not a thing that we do anymore. I don't know why.
Because medication. Because a lot of medication has come around to be able to help people still function in society with these.
Yeah, well now it's trickling down outside of the authorities' hands into just general public space. And so, like you said, with the advent of the medications and the people being able to, for the most part, operate normally in society, but then sometimes they don't operate normally in society, and when they don't, regular society is now witnessing what happens. Right. And especially when a famous person does it, then it gets a lot of play and a lot of really big attention. And so people just don't know how to react to it. Like it's like kids, like when kids see somebody with like no leg, they don't know how to react. They've never seen somebody with no leg before. So maybe they make fun of them.
Shit.
Whoa, that dude's got no leg. And then you're like, whoa, hey, Johnny, chill. Whoa, you don't say that. Like, this is a good opportunity to have a little talk to you. Some people don't have legs.
Yeah, it's true. What's even interesting conversation that even Kanye kind of outlines. He said, man, I want all these crazy music and this crazy fashion and this, you want all this crazy. He's like, you ever think that maybe that crazy shit gonna come from a crazy guy? Yeah. And it's like, damn, I almost wonder, like, do these things go hand in hand? Like, is his ability to look at things in such a different aspect and avenue and open up all these different avenues of conversation through art and stuff, is that because he has this type of mental disorder that, I'm not sure if it's a disorder. He probably call it like a superpower, or something like.
Seems to be a symbiotic relationship,
right?
It's like, I have this thing that I'm dealing with that I'm going to use to make this very unique, crazy, whatever it is, music in his case, and then benefit from that financially and culturally. Like, he's been canceled a few times, but always kind of come back and reimagined himself and been able to be like this other thing.
Yeah.
And he's like the Teflon Don. It's like
true.
He can do all these crazy things, and we're still looking. He's still famous. He's
still looking forward to the Don to drop.
Still eyeballs on.
Yeah,
because he's bigger than life. He's, like I said to you, he's like Michael Jackson or Elvis. He's like a living version of like a larger than life character. And he's a good conversation for mental illness, because he's everybody knows something, has seen something about this guy. And like Letterman said, we don't know what we're gonna get. Just roll the dice and bring Kanye out.
Right. It's gonna be something. You bring up Michael though, because it just shows comparison. It is, in the sense of like, that eccentricness that we see in celebrity. There's so many examples, and you wonder, like, what's the cause? Like, are all these people like, got some type of mental health thing, and then that kind of propels you? Do you get into the industry and the industry drives you nuts? You know what I mean? Type thing, or like, how does that correlation play out? Like that relationship between those two things. Because then even Letterman talks about using medications and things, and I'm like, dang, like,
how much of this is genetically programmed and culturally programmed?
Right.
I will say that it tends to happen a lot more with musicians than any other type of famous entertainment people. Like, there's still some, but like Andy Kaufman's one of them. But like, if you think of like actors,
Andy Warhol. You know what I mean? That's another one.
I would say like maybe Kubrick, like, or like one of these weird directors
and stuff who be into some very eccentric type things and ideas and stuff. So. But I would say you see it a lot more.
I mean, but it seems to be very prevalent in music.
Yeah, it does. You see it a lot.
There's something about the art of music that seems to have a stronger correlation with those data points, if you will, than with
you bring
other
up
forms that I mean, at least from my
point though,
like
the
amount of what I know.
The musicians, it's a lot of musicians. It's a lot of like painters, I think too. Like, I think back to Da Vinci or Picasso, or like, there was an Italian guy that locked himself in his house and painted all these murals on his walls when he was going insane, and like all those murals are insanely cool.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, the tortured artist trope is things are tropes because they come from some sort of pattern over time.
Stereotype. Right. Yeah. When you were talking about it before too, John, about how it seems to be like something hard, I thought of this analogy of like Cyclops, and it's like, as long as you got the glasses on and you can kind of control that energy to a certain extent, you can harness it and use it for like a powerful tool. But there's always that potential that those glasses could come off, and then it's just raw, uncontrolled power that's coming.
Just melt
the whole fucking everything around you. Exactly. You just fucking go off.
Like Kanye did on TMZ when he was talking about the slavery thing.
You know what I'm saying?
He just took his glasses off and
went
like melted all of America, and they were like, "Whoa, dude! You can't say that. You can't say that people chose to be slaves."
Right. And it sucks too, because I mean, one of the best examples. Let's go ahead and bring it up, because maybe some people don't even know. Kanye I think we actually watched this, didn't we? Kanye's what do you call those things? Campaign rally.
Oh yeah, where he cried.
Where he was flipping obviously having some type of episode, right? Like,
there's been a couple of things like this.
I'm not trying to quiet your voices, actually, so I don't want to say that in an improper way. I just haven't had the time to word it in the most elegant way possible. So that's a Stephen move. When Harriet Tubman never actually freed the slaves. She just had the slaves go work for other white people.
Y'all, we leaving right now.
And for 1 month and 2 months and 3 months, we talked about her not having this child. She had the pills in her hand. If people know these pills where you take the pills.
my guy on the left, he's like, nah, Kanye, don't go there, dog. Like, watch this man.
Oh yeah, look at his face, dude.
No.
Oh, he did say no.
So I was sitting up in Paris, and I had my leather pants on. You already know, if you got leather pants on, you already know who this person must think they are. Right? And I'm in the apartment where my wife was actually robbed. And I have my laptop up, and I got all of my creative ideas. I got my shoes, I got my sound cover, I got communities, I got clothes, I got all this.
I like how they couldn't tell what that was. Inaudible. Like.
And God said, if you fuck with my vision, I'm going to fuck with yours. And I called my wife. And she said, we're going to have this baby. My mom saved my life. My dad wanted to
Here we go.
abort me. My mom saved my life. There would have been no Kanye West because my dad was too busy.
Is that a presidential campaign?
Yeah,
rally?
yeah. See, that's
Good
I
point,
feel
Nick.
so
Sure,
bad
sure.
about this because
Good
I
point,
have
Nick.
the exact same mentality I did when we talked about it the first time, which is like, this is all great in the most horrible context possible. Like, I love that
Yeah.
he's being able to talk about this and that people care and stuff. But like, I'm not voting for this guy.
Right.
Like, if, like, you know what I mean? Like,
But see,
there's
so-
no
yeah,
way
I
that
see
I
what
could
you're
vote for a man who made a speech like this, regardless of if he was Kanye West or if Ron DeSantis comes out and has a speech like this in 2024. How do you vote for him?
So, but my point being, then that brings up such a good point. So then why? Like,
So then why what?
like, why if you're trying to get elected, or if you're running a campaign, like, why pick this time to go on this type of?
Oh no, I don't think he picked it. I think it's just he was talking and then he just
It starts
had a
to-
train of thought and he just talking and talking and then all of a
starts
sudden he
to
starts
ramp
talking
up.
about his dad
It starts to
trying to
ramp
kill
up.
him.
It starts
And
to
like, I
ramp
mean,
up.
I'm not if my dad tried to kill me and I happened to start talking about it in a conversation, it would be very difficult to not get emotional about that.
Yeah.
So I'm not like blaming him for
No,
that,
but I'm
but I
just-
think that like that's the problem is that with Kanye or maybe with all of these situations, they come up in what the rest of society would consider inopportune times. Like, hey, you know, like that's when we sit down to have those kinds of talks, we'll sit down to have those kinds of talks. But right now we need you to be who we need you to be. And I feel like that's the problem with stuff like this is like, he's just, like you said, he's going through some shit right now on this stage. And everybody was like, what is this dude talking about? Because they weren't in that context.
Yeah,
You know,
they're
like
all
Kanye
standing
went
there
there.
like,
yeah, Kanye went there, and they are all standing where he just came from, and they're like, "What's happening right now?"
Well,
They all think they're in a Borat movie.
yeah, like right, like are we getting punked right
like,
now?
yeah,
Right?
Ashton Kutcher's about to bust out
Right?
of the fucking.
But that's the thing that's interesting. Look at Britney too. Like this is their life. So when is Kanye not in a public setting? You know what I'm saying? Like when does Kanye ever get the luxury of doing something in his daily basis that's not forward facing or fan facing, right? And so you saw the same thing with like Britney in the sense too, where like people are saying like, okay, look, so I know you got that thing where you do all that stuff, but you need to put that shit down real quick and you come out here and function and you need to run for president or you need to do this meet and greet or you need to whatever, do this interview. These people are having a mental like, you know what I mean? Where they don't really have control of their brain and yet everybody around them is expecting them to function in a way that that you want them to. You know,
Yeah, but I think that it's, and I don't know if you are, but it sounds like you're like blaming the audience people for not being therapists for him.
No.
But I mean, that's what I'm saying though, is like, it's one thing when you go to a therapist and you have these kinds of conversations with somebody and like, that's the context, but this isn't the context and neither is the functions and stuff like that. So it's not that, I think that people's insensitivity is not always such a malicious thing. It's just like they're caught off guard. You know what I mean? Like, you don't see these people's real lives. Like, you don't know Kanye West the man. You know Kanye West the artist,
the figure,
Kanye
the
West
avatar.
the avatar of Kanye West.
Yeah.
You don't really know who he is as a person. So when he comes up here with all this personal stuff, and you're not used to anything personal, like, that'd be like if somebody on the train came up to you and started talking about this stuff, and you were like, "Whoa, bro! Like, this is not."
It wasn't even personal. He started off by saying Harriet Tubman didn't really free the slaves, and it's like, what do you? Where? Like, like it's not even like
that's a political statement. I mean, that's a ridiculous statement, but that's not necessarily out of the context of a presidential speech.
You can see a man who is trying their best to do something, but they seem to be hindered, is my point. Like, I don't think this is like a outcrying of emotion type thing where it's like, oh, these really traumatic things just started coming up. Like, it just looks like he said, like, he's ramping up. Like, there's so many different thoughts and streams of consciousness coming into his mind at once, and he's trying to formulate them, and then you start getting like, you start losing control of the whole situation, and then it starts breaking down into just screaming and crying and I killed my daughter, and then people are like, all right, chill out. And he's like, no, fuck that, like, I got some shit to say, and everybody's like, no, and then it turns into, they're trying to get me, you know, and it's like, you see this happen. I'm gonna segue this conversation, John. I don't know if you had a comment that you wanted to make real quick. No,
mostly just about like we're talking about like what we see and how we perceive these actions, and there's patterns. So we as a society, if you know a lot about Kanye, know it's like, okay, this whole crazy, like he was at TMZ, he's done that in interviews before,
right,
where he's like, you know what, I am a god, you know, Sway in the morning, where he's screaming at Sway. There's a video of him recently where he was at his ranch in Montana, and like somebody was there, like Kid Cudi or something was there talking to him, and he was just screaming at him. Like, he was just like, and somebody had a cell phone video of it. And it's like, you've seen these manic things, and it's like, there's no getting away from it. Like, if he's gonna do a presidential campaign and then cry about his dad wanting to abort him and shit, like, how is that not news? Like,
yeah,
you know,
true.
like, everybody's gonna be talking about this, so it's like, how do we talk about it? Because the media is a bully, so they just bully him.
Yeah,
and it's like, they're not saying Kanye West has, you know, they're basically saying it from the sense of like, look how crazy Kanye is.
Right.
You know,
makes chaotic presidential rally debut rather than being like, oh,
and
you know,
they're describing it accurately as well. I would also say,
true,
because that is, this
but
is
again,
kind of
like,
a crazy thing.
But
that's
like
what
you
I'm
said,
saying,
they're caught off guard.
The media is, they're caught off guard. Like, they don't. It's not. I don't think
it's
that
also
the
well
fact
documented
that
he has bipolar though. Like, when he was diagnosed, like it's on the like, it's not like he's never said this out loud.
No, but again, like, even if, like you said, with the person that we know who has bipolar, like, even if that. Like, that's not the first thing that comes to your mind if they were to just start flipping out on you in the middle of some random thing that we were doing. Yeah. Like, your first thought wouldn't be like, oh, they've got bipolar, so, you know, whatever. Like, it would catch you off guard. You'd be like, whoa, like, what's going on here? Or, you know, maybe because it's a more personal thing, we'd have there'd be less latency there. But I think that that's so important to remember, is that, like, there's nothing personal between the relationship of Kanye's fans and Kanye. You know, like, I know that the fans feel that way, but Kanye doesn't feel that. I mean,
like you said, they don't know
Kanye does, but not on a personal level. Like, he
him.
has a relationship to his fans as an idea,
right,
but not to them personally.
Right.
And so without that connection there, I think that it's very easy to get lost in this like kind of. I mean, what do you do when you're confused about stuff? You tend to make fun of it.
So let me segue this, because then that's the funny thing about it though, right? Is like, other black men have done the same thing Kanye's doing right now, right? But Kanye does it on a stage, and so we laugh or we mock or we're shocked or we're at all. But like, there's other kids with Elijah, what was that kid's name? Who was killed by the police for having a similar outburst. Like, imagine, like, there's people out here now who are being detained by the police, which, if I notice something through Kanye, right, it seems like when he's in these high pressure type situations, he's explained when he's not on his medication, if he doesn't have that barrier to stop him from kind of ramping up over that edge, this happens to other people, and then they're killed. They're shot by the police because they won't stop resisting arrest or something like that. It's like, this person's not resisting arrest, they're having a manic episode. But because we never make that association, you know, we're just like, well, I don't know. He just started flipping the fuck out, right? And you never, as a society, we're not trained to think, okay, well, hey, maybe this person's going through something here, or like maybe this person has a thing. You know, it's interesting, like how that goes about, like how we treat people like that. You know, in the sense, especially too, like when you're rich or you're famous or something, and you're experiencing these types of things, it's like, oh, you know, whatever, like let's just meme it. But people die because they we don't ever do that. We don't ever stop and think, okay, well, what's actually going on here?
Yeah.
You know?
And I love that you talked about how, like, that's something that I try to do with anybody. You know, it's like whenever I see some sort of a bust up happening, whether it's online or in real life or anything like that, I always assume this person's going through something right now. Maybe it's not related to this, but there's obviously a lot of emotional and psychological issues coming to the fore right here. And so I always try to remind myself about that. One example of that was when I was working at the cannabis company in LA. There, you know, we were in like a really bad area of LA, and there was homeless people, and a lot of them had drug problems and stuff like that. But a lot of them also just had mental problems too. And I remember one night, this girl, it was like break time, and she went out to her car, and this homeless dude who like lives on the street that we all had to park our cars on, he was like smacking her car with like a stick or something like this. And she got really scared, rightly so. And so she comes back and she's like talking to everybody, and she's like asking for advice. And like, I remember she came and talked to me, and she was asking if I like something about pepper spray, like if I thought pepper spray would be like effective or anything like that, or if she's like, I got a bat, but it's in the car, and I don't know if like, could you walk me to my car and everything? And I was like, well, why are you going to attack this guy? Right. And she was like, well, you know, I just feel unsafe. And I was like, I feel that. Like, you know, like if he's whacking your car, he might whack you too. But I just remember like a lot of the other people that she was talking to were like, man, if he fucking did that to my car, I fucking curb stomped the shit out of him. I can't believe blah, blah, blah. And I was like, bro, your car's a piece of shit. Like your car is like, it's got crap all over it. You don't take care of it. So why would this homeless guy whacking it with a stick, who's clearly got some mental problems, whether it be from drugs or just a mental disorder, like your first reaction is that you're going to violently assault this man? Right. And like, that's the same thing I told her. I was like, well, look, if you are going to use anything against this person, make sure you know what you're doing. Because if you've never shot pepper spray or used a bat, like it's not really going to be an effective thing for you. But also, I think you should stop and think about what's actually happening here. Clearly, this man is having issues that nobody else seems to be like acknowledging the fact that this man sleeps in the gutter and like does drugs on the daily and is clearly not in a sound mental space. And so I just think, like you said, ridicule and violence is not the approach that we should take with people like that.
But you know, like you said,
but unfortunately that's just our first reaction
is to put more pressure on them.
Yeah, well, I don't think there is an answer on what to do with those people, because in the current sense, what do you do to somebody who can't afford their medicine, who doesn't want their medicine, who has no means to get their medicine? Do you have the government come out and just force them to be medicated and to wash themselves, or do you provide services for them to help them get out of the gutter? We see this with Venice Beach, you know, the homeless people, where you literally have sheriffs coming now and pulling guns and like rifles on people camping on the beach because they're like, yo, like you can't. It's like
can't stay here.
You can't stay here anymore. And it's like they went down there and gave free haircuts, housing, tents. It looks like they're trying, but at the same time, how do you can't just fix somebody's mental illness by giving them a shower. You can't just come down there and be like, all right, you're good to go, homeless guy, move into this temporary housing. You know, like what if that person has bipolar disorder that's undiagnosed
or something like
you
that?
Know,
right?
Like what if? Yeah, I mean, and not to mention the fact that drugs not only exacerbate these things, but they help people in some sense maintain, who are possibly like, if you're addicted to one of these things, it could have something to do with your genetic mental health, like you know, how you were born. Maybe you were born with bipolar disease.
Yeah, you know, it's very fascinating
disorder.
Let me bring this thing that I saw just right before the podcast. I couldn't believe how I just randomly came across this clip. Look at how they treat this woman, and just giving context of everything we've just been talking about. Also, I think it's important to kind of read the little caption here. It says, our flight was supposed to finish boarding with doors closing at 9 p.m. and this woman ran into the plane, clearly out of breath, a few minutes before 9. From what I understand, she blew past the flight attendant at the front without scanning her boarding pass and just came straight into the plane. When she got on the board, she threw about 3 or 4 Trader Joe's bags full of her belongings onto one of the first class seats and sat down, saying that she'd just sit there. When the flight attendant informed her that the seats were pre-assigned and asked for her boarding pass, she got flustered and started digging through her bags for it. After dropping a bunch of trash on the ground and handing the flight attendant an old boarding pass, she finally produced what I guess was a correct boarding pass for the flight we were on. She kept saying, I've been trying to get on this flight for 2 months. The attendant walked her back to her seat and had to carry all of her bags since she wanted to store them in the first class overhead bins and refused to move them. So when she got to her seat, she started talking to herself very loudly, almost as if she was in a manic episode and talking to someone who wasn't there. The passengers next to her were obviously very uncomfortable and started complaining to the flight attendants. The woman overheard this and began to scream and cuss at everyone involved. At this point, the flight attendant went up front, spoke to the captain, and called security. When security arrived, he assessed the scene and determined that police were needed. Officers arrived, and she was escorted off the plane. The flight was delayed an hour due to this incident. So then this is what happened or transpired, sort of. You see the lady. She's right here with the little shower cap on. Police talk to her for a little while. It's kind of inaudible. They're still just talking to her, trying to figure out, I guess, what the situation is here. It's 4 minutes, so I'm just trying to get us through to the highlights here. Still talking to the lady.
I think at this point... Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Still don't really know what they're talking to her about, but, you know, they're just... And you can see she starts getting kind of belligerent here.
Yeah, and I think you can deduce that they knew coming onto this plane as police they were going to take her off of this thing.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, that was already assumed that it was it. You can see she's
count
now
the
crying.
phones, recording it.
Oh, wait, she makes a good point. She's yelling at them for recording her.
I can't deal. Well, we were supposed to bend these. She's embarrassing.
He just said she's embarrassing.
Cute purse, though. The backpack.
Alright, though. Press charges on it.
Anybody got fucking camera? Slap the fuck out of me. Anybody? You think shit funny? Do 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 you? Do you, bitch? Do you? I'll give a thing, nigga.
Everybody rejoices. This lady's like, oh, yeah, thank God we're done with that. And then I guess life goes on. Everybody laughs.
I'm surprised they didn't clap.
I mean, they're just short of it, right?
I mean, yeah, some of them kind of did. There was a lot of, like, giggling and snickering after she got off the plane.
Mm-hmm. But you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I'm no doctor, right? I don't know, but seems kind of similar situation that we just saw Kanye in, right? Like Kanye is doing this thing, right? He's kind of flustered at first, and he's not really wilding out. He's saying some strange things. He's not really wilding out, and then it escalates, to towards the end. He's like, "They're trying to kill my fucking father." You know what I'm saying? Like, and then here you got this lady too. By the way, can anybody point to a law that she broke? I mean, if all this story is just exactly how it went down, where she came running onto the plane, like obviously she blew through a couple protocols that are standard, but I don't see why a private citizen would be expected to know that was the protocol, right? Like
She just got to the point where Delta or wherever her Spirit was like, look, you broke our terms of service. It's like Burger King Hat Man. You remember Burger King Hat Man? There was a man with a Burger King hat that spoke the N-word. It was an old white man.
Right.
And he was on a flight fighting with some people, and he just, he got to the point where they were like, sir, you've broken our terms of service. You got a little too wild.
This man was screaming, racial slurs, so you could be like hate speech.
He got there. He didn't start with that.
No,
I think he got there. It was like there was some escalation involved.
It was escalation.
You don't just
but
start
there
off.
was escalation here too, right? Like, and then she starts screaming at the people who are filming her and stuff like that, and even pointing like, which y'all think is funny. It just seems like this whole same scenario where this lady, she's different. I mean, she's got trash bags full of stuff. She's talking about she's been trying to get on this plane for two months. She's trying to see her kid. I think is something I hear her say, like, I'm just trying to see my son or some shit. So, but we don't understand the context of what's going on. Yes, she's weird, right? Like, she's not falling in line with everybody else and doing the little marchy ant thing where you're like, but some people just don't know. And I just thought that it was fascinating because this whole thing gets out of hand because she sits down next to those people and starts talking to herself. I don't know how loudly she was talking to herself, but she's sitting here probably mumbling to herself, and somebody else is like, like, I got a crazy over here. Come get this crazy away from me. And they're like, oh shit, are you crazy? And she's like, I've been known to be crazy sometimes, but I'm gonna be on my best behavior to get through this flight. And they're like, let's see what security has to say about. And then, you know what I'm saying? And then it escalates to the situation where this bitch is getting kicked off the plane. She's screaming at all these people, and we're all like, yeah, that's right. Get her the fuck out of here. And I'm just like, yo, this could be a sick person though. You see what I'm saying? Like, imagine this person's sick, and look how everybody's treating her.
It's a sick society because that's like the culture has shifted, and there's a lot more mental illness. So it's like, you're gonna have more ladies with Trader Joe's bags per capita. It's
right.
Like we're
I don't
pushing people to their limits.
I don't necessarily know if you can call it mental illness. I mean, she's obviously got some emotional stability issues. But and whether or not that's caused by mental illness or not, it's hard to say. But I mean, clearly she lost control of her emotions there, for whatever reason. But I think that to highlight what you were just saying, Rod, about everybody's like, yeah, get her off. It's because everybody else on that plane is thinking we're delayed now. Like, my time is now being taken up because she's acting crazy, and nobody's thinking about her at all. Like, the only amount that they're thinking of her is how much they want her off the plane.
Century of the self.
Even that guy, you hear the guy, and he was like, yo, we've been supposed to leave already.
Right.
And so, like, that's all they're thinking about. Nobody cares that the woman is trying to see her son or whatever. I thought the fact that there's so many people were recording all of these episodes on these planes and just everything in general now, that's so gross to me. Like, your first thought when you see something going down is like, oh, I'm gonna record this and put it online. And it's like, even if it is something that's, because I know that some people catch stuff and it goes on the news or whatever, and it's like the only footage of stuff. But I mean, on this plane, like, there's nothing newsworthy of a person getting kicked off a plane unless, I don't know,
made it to our conversation,
she slapped somebody or something like that. But I think that we see too many people, for my personal taste, we see too many people who are willing to record other people when they're going through something, and not enough people willing to reach out and be like I heard one guy kind of in the beginning was like, yo, what'd she do?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And I was like, yeah, where's the rest of the plane being like, yo, what'd she do? And like everybody, like you said, those people next to her were like, yo, she's kind of weird me out. And it's like, okay, well,
That's not a crime,
I'll find
though.
somebody else. Like, hey, do you guys mind sitting next to
Next
her
to
and
her.
switching with them because they feel a little bit uncomfortable?
I just
Like,
think it's like we talked about before. It's like there is obviously, to me, through this whole thing about how we treat Kanye's and the famous people, all the way down to the lower citizens, there is obviously still a stigma out here against people with mental health disorders. You know, we are very much like you said. Like, it's cool to have that, but just do it over there. Like, don't bring it around.
Well,
me,
couple that
Yeah.
with the century of the self, in the sense that I don't care enough about you. I'm more worried about me.
and my thing, what I'm trying
like
to
if
do.
I have a piece of property and I have neighbors, instead of being like, oh, let me go meet my neighbors, I'm like, I don't fuck with that. Like I'm, it's
You're
the century
other.
of the self. So you have these people with mental health issues, on like this lady who's going through an episode, and then you surround it in a culture of people who were just like, my plane's late, man. I gotta
Right.
fucking. Like I'm supposed to pick my thing up, and
But
such
I
and
would
such.
argue that they did that to themselves. Like, I mean, the lady ran on to the plane late, but she ran on before she was supposed to take off. And it was really, at first, was just a problem of not having the right seat, which I see that happen all the time on a plane.
Yeah.
And then they got her to the right seat, and then somebody complained because she was talking to herself next to them.
Yeah.
And so I don't see, I get what you're saying. Like, if she was really delaying the plane by doing things, like she's just walking up and down the aisle and they're like, hey man, we need to take a seat. And she's like, nope, I'm just going to walk up and down the aisle. Right. And like was doing something to actively deter your flight. But the whole delay, the whole situation starts from just this person acting out of what, even like Kanye says, like just acting different, just
a little
acting
bit.
different, just being a little different than everybody else. And it turns into this whole situation, ending in everybody clapping at her demise. And I just wonder, that's where I've left this whole conversation. This is kind of like, I'll leave it my final point. Is like, I realized that I started as that guy who just mocked and laughed at Kanye. It was just like, I mean, even some of the things when he was talking about slavery and stuff on TMZ, like, I kind of got what he was getting at. Like, I get where he was going with it. But at the same time, I was just like, yo, this for a while, dog. Like, y'all tripping. I'm the first person to be like, I wrote him off. I'm like, y'all can't believe y'all fuck with this crazy motherfucker. Like, he ain't good. He crazy, I really was that person. But through this whole like diving in, learning more about Kanye's particular situation and how that relates to all these other celebrities that we've seen in the spotlight, like Dave Chappelle talked about it really well when he said, when he's on Oprah, and he's like, no, really ask yourself though, what would cause a person to walk away from $50 million and just run to Africa? You don't stop. Like, you just, the media goes, yep, Dave Chappelle went crazy and ran to Africa. And then that's what we all run with. It's just like, yo, Dave Chappelle, crazy as fuck. But you don't stop and ask yourself, now, but really though, like, why would somebody do that? Is he, like, what's actually going on here? And so I've stopped and I've actually started looking at that situation way differently and starting to see like, okay, well, if this person is mumbling to themselves or, doing something, like, instead of me immediately taking the stance of like danger, threat, other, like, I'm gonna get my bat and beat this motherfucker upside the head because they're being different, I start asking myself, well, maybe this person has some type of disorder and needs some type of help, isn't getting some type of treatment or support, and needs somebody right now to help them rather than lock them up or bash them down, Whatever.
I just put my headphones in.
You, like you said, kind of mind your own business.
As long as she's not doing anything to me.
As long as she's not threatening me, like if she tried to like hit me
But
or something.
then again,
assault
I'm
me.
also very secure in myself. Like, I feel like if she started to attack me, I feel pretty good about
could
being
handle
able to like handle myself with her and with most people. So it's like, I think that a lot of that comes from insecurity. Like, you're not comfortable around people doing things that are not normal. I thought it was very enlightening that whoever wrote this caption, I get it's quoted from the original poster of the video, and she said, I thought it was very enlightening that she had to point out that she kept all of her belongings in Trader Joe's bags,
right,
instead of like a normal piece of
suitcase
luggage
or
or something like that. And it's like, luggage is kind of fucking expensive,
right?
Like, like Trader Joe's bags are cheap,
right,
as in free.
Right.
So What's the problem with
also
her
made a-
having her shit
They also
in...
made it a point to say that she was like dumping trash, as if you were at the airport rushing, you wouldn't have some trash in your
Falling out
Like,
your
you've
purse
never
or
just
something,
thrown
right?
trash anywhere. Like, yeah, like, what are you talking about? Like, people throw trash all the guy, you know, so it's like, you do, like you said, she's talking to herself, she's got her stuff in these little Trader Joe's bags, and all of
Obviously
these things are
disheveled,
just
right?
playing on these people's, you know, it's their, like, limbic brain, where it's like, you know, if somebody starts, because that's the problem, is that we're always operating in this modern society with outdated software in our brains, in the sense that anytime we see something different, we are actually hardwired to look at that first and foremost as a threat.
Right.
And then once we assess that it's not a threat, then we can be like,
Show
okay,
compassion or
now I'll
something.
show compassion. But unfortunately, we have to get through that threat shit first. And that's just a biological thing that we have to deal with. But because we know about it, we have to be able to be like, hey, wait, I feel threatened by this person, but she hasn't actually done anything to threaten me yet. Like, she's not whipping out bombs or box cutters or anything. She's not taking my stuff. Why do I feel so afraid of her?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just because she's acting a little bit weird.
Which is sucks, because that is my final point, but then there is the DuPont thing, where it's like, but you could end up murdered. You know what I mean? Because this man really did...
I mean,
She
you
could rip the
always
door
end up
open
murdered.
on the
Right,
flight,
she could have
mid-flight.
taken that episode to a point, but and then like I said, it sucks because I'm not saying it's not a tricky situation, because in that they all said, man, we wish we would have addressed this sooner. But I think even that, you know, instead of addressing it, could have simply just been like, yo, maybe we need to go get, you know, John some help, not just like John DuPont is the guy, but like maybe we need to get him some help. The solution didn't necessarily have to be like, yo, we should just drop this guy and get the fuck away from him. I don't know, but you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And I doubt anybody asked this lady, like, hey, what can we do to help you calm down and
right,
get through
in
this flight?
situation.
You know, it was like, you are a different other thing that we don't want to deal. You're not conforming to our societal standards, so I'm going to film you for likes. And we're going to get you kicked off our plane.
But dude, I mean, you see this in our cops too. I mean, it's just the same thing, you know? Like, people will get thrown into high stress, high pressure situations, and we expect them, just calm down, just comply. Just comply, you know. And it's like, you don't know these people's mental health, like, you don't know how they handle stress and stuff, you know. Some people aren't equipped with these, like you said, that security in themselves to be like, this is okay, like, I can handle
I
this
understand that I'm
situation.
being arrested
Right,
right
yeah,
now,
yeah.
but I feel confident that I'll be able to beat this case in
court.
the court. Nobody's thinking like
Some
that.
people are like, yo, y'all are trying to take me. I didn't do nothing wrong. I didn't do nothing wrong. And they're like, yes, you did. And it's like, no, you know, and then you get manic, or you end up in this episode and then they shoot you. And it's like, well, why'd you shoot him? Well, he was
He started
wild.
flipping the fuck out. He was resisting arrest, and then he dove for the floorboards, and so we had to shoot him.
So it's an interesting topic, man. Like I said, it's interesting.
Yeah, there's a whole other topic in here, like how interesting it is to be the voyeur who watches these things through the lens, you know, because like I'm fascinated with this type of stuff to an extent, both from a sociology standpoint and also from just like knowledge, like, you know, watching people's interactions with the cops who, like, you know, this guy fucking beat this cop with the laws and stuff. I'll be into that shit. I'll be like, damn, you right. Like,
Dude.
like watching these things and being like, oh wow, yeah, that cop was really wrong. And like I get super interested in the voyeuristic aspect of like, I'm watching this real life scene unfold that's not faked, that's not you know, in any way. It's like watching the movie The Joker, except it's real life, you know, like your character study.
Yeah, for real.
Dude, before we move on, I knew it, so we're gonna. I'd just be so remiss if I didn't bring up this point. Okay, enlightenment. Okay, I gotta talk about this because this is my own personal experience here. Okay, you remember how we were saying it's weird that like just in 2017, like all of a sudden Kanye just kind of was diagnosed with bipolar, and he might have always been that way, but you do feel like there was this like 1 or 2 years where Kanye's episodes seem to be more erratic and like he was struggling with it, and then you see like him on Letterman and he's kind of like back to normal, right? And he's like, they got him on medications and stuff, and he was taking medication for a while. He even talked about being able to be okay and off medication. Anyways, in 2017 too, which is ironic that it's the same time, but I'm not trying to make it to this big old thing, but okay. You remember how he talked about how he feels like it's like ramping up, and he even talked in the Letterman about how he feels like he's tapping into the universe, right? In this energy, and then that energy kind of gets stronger, and then it gets hard. Okay. in 2017, I went through like the spiritual awakening, right? Where I started to tap into like the universe or like the power of life, I would say, right? And I remember going through very manic episodes, okay, to the point, Mac knows, he watched me. Like, there was this 6 to 9 months, maybe, where I was really kind of losing my mind. Now, in my mind, I was having this enlightenment experience. Like, I was coming into my awareness of reality was changing. Like, I was seeing it in different ways. And it was hard for me to see myself from everybody else's viewpoint. Now, in the context of full disclosure, at this time I was also taking a lot of Adderalls too. Like, I was doing a lot of Adderall, and so I think that played into it a lot, right? And so in a way, I was kind of probably manic from this type of thing. But I was also, so I was like doing this good thing of like spiritual like awakening where I was like getting more in touch with this energy. But then I was also like using this supplemental type energy with this. Anyways, the point is like there's times where the fam was worried about me. I remember calling my mom and being like, you know, thinking that she knew all this stuff. Like I was like, you knew the world was like this and you didn't tell me and this and that. Like, no wonder y'all are. And my mom's like, what are you talking about? And then I was like, what? And I was like, you know, screaming and crying at her and stuff. And I'm like, nah, come on, tell me the truth. And she's like, what are you talking about? You know, like, what's going on with you? Right. And then there's times where I'm like standing up on our counter, like in our kitchen. I'm like, oh, this is fake. I'm like, this isn't a fucking, you know, and I was real Kanye West with it. Like, let's just be honest. Like, I was really like, yo, Harriet Tubman didn't fucking free the slaves. Like,
radio, fuck you.
Yeah, fuck you.
Radio,
like, yo,
fuck
shit.
you.
And in my head, I really knew what I was talking about. Like, and I still do. Like, I really knew when I was saying this isn't real, right? I was just saying, like, when you think of a counter, for instance, right? Like, we just made that whole idea up. Like, there was a time when countertops didn't exist and we didn't use them for food. Like, if you brought a Neanderthal into your house, they would walk all over your countertop and run all over that shit and be like, I don't know what the fuck this is, right? But we manufactured this idea that you don't walk on the counter, okay? So it's something I could explain in real time, and I knew what I was talking about. But in this episode where I'm just kicking and screaming, I'm like, everything's fucking fake. Can't you see? You know, it's like, damn. I could have been diagnosed the same situation. It just lends me back to that conversation. Is it genius? Is it really like, is Kanye just tapping into this power, right? And then as he taps into it, it's hard to control, and he had to learn how to, or is learning how to control that newfound power or understanding.
Did rehab help him? I mean, he went to rehab after that episode on
or
stage.
Did he just
so it's like,
or did he
so
just lose his
did
fucking
that
mind?
Yeah, is that something? Yeah, that's another question.
So I
too.
just
like,
had
what?
to put that in. Yeah. Because I don't know. Because I still to this day, like I said, I explain that as when I lost my mind, but it doesn't happen anymore. So it's not like something that I deal with. We talked about my other friend who could have been diagnosed that way at a younger age, but doesn't really operate like that anymore. Kanye could very well find himself growing out of it. So I wonder is it bipolar? Is it a spiritual awakening? Is it, it's just, whew. I'm excited to see where society goes with it.
One thing that I will say is that when you kind of question, like, is it bipolar? Is it spiritual awakening stuff? It reminds me of a book that I've been wanting to read for a while by this guy named Thomas Saz. And it's called The Myth of Mental Illness. And he wrote this whole book about how what we consider mental illness, I think it was from I can't remember if it was either like the 50s or the 60s or something. It's an older book. But he talks about how basically, and like I said, I haven't read it yet, so I don't really know about it too much. It's on my radar because he talks about how like everything that we consider as being these mental disorders actually come from a lot of other factors, a lot of it being emotional instability and stuff like that. And so, but we have such a tenuous grasp on emotions that we want to consider it a biological thing because we have ways to manipulate that and we have ways that we can explain that. Like, people can't really like explain emotions. Yeah. Like there's no measure markers for your emotions and shit like that. So And he was basically saying that that's mental illness is like a myth, basically. And, you know, just in the idea that you're not mentally ill. It's not like your brain isn't working properly. It's just that you have lots of other issues that are probably more deep than your brain. And I was like, whew, that's an interesting book. So anybody that's interested in weird conspiracy theory books, you can check that out.
In the description.
I'll put it in the description. Yeah.
Right on. All right, cool. Let's move on, guys.
So I'm bringing you guys a little bit of this tech stuff this week. With we're going to start with Apple. It was leaked on August 4th by this guy Matthew Green. He said, I've had independent confirmation from multiple people that Apple is releasing a client-side tool for CSAM. That's child... Hold on, I got it pulled up right here. I think it's child sexual abuse imagery, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check. Child sexual abuse material is what that's called. So basically, Apple is setting up a system to monitor people's phones for this. Now, they started by saying it's just going to scan your iCloud photos. But it looks like these tools will allow them to scan all of your iPhone photos, even if they are not in the cloud. So any photo you take with your iPhone now, iPhone is developing a tool that can scan it, and it's searching for essentially blacklisted photos or images.
Or just
images
like
that they
kitty
deem
porn and shit.
Well, that's what I mean by that, is that how do you decide what is and what is not that? Well, there's a blacklist. That's the thing.
Okay.
So it's essentially saying, hey, we have a list of images, you know, from, I guess they work with, the name of the company that they work with is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So they have a strategic partnership with the Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and I'm sure FBI databases and things where they can, these pictures can be flagged, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, the same way with reverse image searching. So basically, Apple is reverse image searching everything in your phone for explicit, like illegal content, content that they consider illegal. This is like sitting a robot on your couch and saying, hey, whenever you deem something illegal to be happening, can you let the authorities know, please?
Right.
I mean,
It's crazy.
Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like,
that's a crazy way to think about it.
It makes sense though, right? Like it's a bit of a crazy analogy, but you're essentially saying, like, I am not, let's be clear here, we're not against people getting caught doing these illegal things. Right. But we're against the invasion of people's privacy to the extent of now, by literally just picking up an iPhone.
Oh, I am for sure.
You are opening your entire world up to them to look at everything you do, not the things that you share with people, but the things that you are doing internally,
what
like
if
on the
somebody sends it
SD,
to you?
like on your, you know what I'm saying? There you go.
Well,
There's
you
your
know what I'm
problem.
saying? Like, what
it's
if you're
political?
just chilling at home? You don't fuck with that shit, but you got like a weird friend. You just met like a weird friend. You know, you work at Subway, and this like new guy. He's like, yo, what's up, man? You fuck with whatever. Like, you fuck with porn? You're like, hell yeah, I fuck with porn. He's like, oh, cool. I'm gonna send you some stuff later. Be like, all right, cool. Make it good. He's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna send you some great shit. Don't worry about it. And then he sends you some like child shit, and you get picked up on the CSAM. That's sketchy.
Exactly.
I'm telling you right now, if I meet anybody and they ask me if I fuck with porn and they want to send me some porn, I'm dropping this motherfucker immediately. Like, don't worry about it, bro. I got my own porn. I don't need you to send me. This isn't the 90s where you're going to give me your tapes and shit. Yeah,
I appreciate
you fuck with porn?
But as you,
I was just trying to set up a thought experiment, but
I know what you were saying, but as soon as you started saying it, I was like, why would you be friends with this person? I would immediately block this person's
You ever
number.
have a friend who sends you like borderline inappropriate memes?
I don't have any friends, so no, I don't.
Sometimes I get people that send me memes. I'm like, damn, I really wish this person would not send me stuff like this.
but this is the argument we've been having for a while, where the goalposts move. So it's like, you know, what they consider to be ban list material or things that are blacklisted now can shift over time to where, you know, we've all, you know, saved a funny picture or a meme or something. Like, at what point does it become like, oh, well, your political discourse is now censored inside of your phone? Like, you know, if someone,
it, like, if they, you know, they can obviously know where your location is. And so, like, let's say if you, like, take a picture of some, like, fire weed that you just bought, but the state that you are in isn't, like, legal. and then they like send the cops over there to like bust you for the weed.
Oh, okay.
Because like right now it's child sex,
right?
And everybody's
but what
like
if that technology
it starts bleeding into other areas,
starts being applied to all different types of
anything that's illegal.
Right.
So like if you make a joke like God, I kill my wife sometimes, and then they'd be like, oh, he says he's gonna kill his wife, get him. It's like this is basically like what's that fucking movie Minority Report, where they can like monitor you for shit that you haven't even done yet, maybe.
Yeah,
that's sketch.
Now people that have been talking about this are like Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden was talking a lot about this. People are really not against the idea of getting rid of some of this sex trafficking. Like that's a positive thing. It's where you apply it. Yeah. So this sort of a tool can be a boon for finding child pornography in people's phones, but imagine what it can do in the hands of an authoritarian government. That's a good point, because later on in the subject matter, I want to stick on this for a minute. We're going to talk about how now there are private companies who can access this information. It's not just Apple's iPhone CSAM, monitoring. It's not just some scanning thing just looking for a blip. It's someone can now go in from a private company without you clicking any messages or anything like that and have access to your phone. So what do you think a government can do with that? Well, we know in America they've already had that. Now it's like, do we really want people selling that to Turkey so they can look at their journalists? Like, that seems like, a misuse of these.
Especially if it's just a built-in tool, Like
if they're making it as now like an iPhone built-in tool.
Apple iPhones, and then they bring up a good point. Like, sure, maybe, right, America has some things that protect you against this thing, but like China don't got that shit. China's over there like, yeah, got him. Like, we
got freedom of speech in America in the sense of like, if I say some wild shit in my iPhone cloud messages, then maybe they're not gonna bust in my door. But you take
like
that
you said,
across
they could
the
use
ocean.
this in Gaza and other places. God, I'm just using random places, but they could use this in places to hunt, like you said, journalists or dissenters or like all types of stuff. Like this could be used in fucking Iran to be like finding people who are trying to coup. Yeah. Or they even.
So I wanted to bring you to this picture that I just sent, because what's interesting about that picture is what the quote that everybody's taking away from it. So basically, there was a memo that got leaked internally from Apple, and it was from Marita Rodriguez, the Executive Director of Strategic Partnerships at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So this is somebody who's on the team of rolling out this CSAM technology so that Apple can scan your photos for bad stuff, for cuties. Okay?
Yeah,
so
right.
Team I don't want to say the word anymore. I'm just going to call it cuties. Yeah. So Team Apple said, she sent this to them, and she says, I want to share a note of encouragement. I'm proud of you. It's invigorating for our team to see, this being unveiled. But the quote that we want to get to is, I know it's been a long day and that many of you probably haven't slept in 24 hours. We know that the days to come will be filled with the screeching voices of the minority. Our voices will be louder. So they're essentially saying, like, we know that people are going to cry about privacy.
Yeah, there's going to be people who don't fuck with this.
We're gonna just say our voices are going to be louder. It's for the children. Right. It's for the children.
Our commitment to lift up kids who have lived through the most unimaginable abuse and victimentations will be stronger.
That's right.
That, my friends, is just as sketchy as it gets, huh? It's just as sketchy as it gets, dude.
It's a little scary, because now it's like that is people in high levels of power.
It is.
That are advocating for not just getting people who are like, I get the part of get the criminals, but to call the people who are worried about privacy the screeching minority is like very tone deaf.
And I want to make this point very clear as we continue on this, because I'm gonna push on this so hard. Like, I'm so against this, but they would love to straw man you, right? Like, as soon as you say this is fucking whack, their first thing is you don't give a fuck about the kids. Mm-hmm. And I would go fuck yourself with that shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
we're talking about a deeper level here.
Yourself with that, okay?
Yeah, way deeper level here.
Wait, it's not about the fucking kids here, okay? Like, trust me, I'm all for holding up all types of, like you said, criminals getting prosecuted for crime. Totally about that shit. All about that shit. How you go about doing it, there is a lot of room for discussion in that bitch. Like justice is there's a such thing as due process and a certain way that you go about bringing about justice. And I don't like when people are just like, I just want to put that out because you already our commitment to lift up kids who, you know what I mean? Like that whole moral grandstanding thing of being like, oh, well, you just don't fucking care about this. Scrap that shit. Like, obviously I care. I got kids. I don't want my kids raped or sexualized on the internet. Like, I don't want none of that shit. But I also don't want y'all just assuming everybody out here is into that shit or is doing that. That's also weird to me.
Yeah, I think just the ability to look in everybody's stuff now being built into the iPhone. When I remember, was it the Boston Marathon bombers where Apple was like, we can't break into their iPhone. It's the privacy agreement.
Right. That's how that's how they used to be. Right.
Yeah, they were telling the FBI like, no, sir, we're not busting into anybody's phones just for you. And then, you know, we had.
Well, I think that their whole thing was that they couldn't. I remember, like, they were like, look, we literally cannot get into this man's iPhone. Like, I know what you're saying, but we just can't. But now it's like, not only can we, but we will. And we'll do it to all of you. Yeah. And you motherfuckers will keep quiet about it. It's otherwise, we'll fucking say that you like diddling kids.
It's the Patriot Act.
It's
the Civilian Patriot Act. This is so weird to me. And so this has already been approved and is going out, or are they gonna like vote on this type of thing, or like this
is something that they unveiled that they're planning on rolling out that was originally leaked. We are currently like seeing this is going to be on the update, is from what I'm understanding.
Those aren't screeching
Apple
voices,
has not, like,
they're warnings.
Yeah. And even in that other guy's Twitter status, like in his bio, he said "screeching voice of the minority." So it's like people are kind of latching onto
that.
Yeah,
because this is an internal memo.
Shit.
Yeah, that was an internal memo that they didn't realize was gonna come out, and it makes me wonder, like you said, who are these people that are creating this type of stuff? Like these, like Apple created a department for CSAM, you know. Like,
so in the TechCrunch article, which is the little green logo one on, if I'm looking at your screen. So what I'm referencing here in this TechCrunch article is what you're asking about. Did Apple create this? So if you scroll down not very far, it's third paragraph or so. It says Apple said its new CSAM technology, Neural Hash, instead works on a user's device and can identify if a user uploads known child abuse imagery to iCloud without decrypting the images until a threshold is met and a sequence of checks to verify the content are cleared. So they're using this technology Neural Hash that was developed. So it's saying Neural Hash will land in iOS 15 and macOS Monterey, slated to be released in the next month or two.
Neural Hash.
Huh. Yeah, it's obvious, like you said, it's just this whole thing. It's like, I get what they're doing, and it's almost at face value. It always, it feels like the right thing, right? You know, it's like, why, if Facebook and them are going to automatically scan all your shit for the word COVID, right? Then, like, I like it better over here. But that's what it shows. Like, you're seeing it on all these different platforms in different ways. Whatever thing that we pick up, it's like, well, we want to make sure that you're not saying things about COVID, so let's just start scanning everything. Let's just start, scanning everything. It's cool when it's child abuse imagery and stuff, right? Like, that's something we can all agree on. But it does get sketchy when that yardstick changes, as you were saying earlier with this conversation. Like, what if that becomes whatever?
Well, you brought up a good point in the sense that when you were talking about, what if somebody sends you some weird shit and you weren't like looking for it or it's not yours or whatever? But I mean, you could weaponize this against people. You just get a burner phone that's not attached to you.
It's mentioned in the TechCrunch article.
Yeah, and I remember when email dumps or like message dumps was like a funny prank you could play on people. But now if you've got like serious political adversaries and you know that they use iPhone, you just send them a huge child porno dump, and then they get fucking caught up on some child pornography shit, and then there you go. There's your election.
And it's great. Great point too, because you said, like, especially if it's like political type thing, like, all I need is the headline. Like, I don't even really need you to get, like, you could go through due process.
The investigation, they find out, like, oh,
he didn't even know, right?
Dump or whatever. But all
We
you
already
gotta do
got
the
the headline.
first day, it's like thousands of child pornography photos found on so and so's fucking phone.
Yeah.
And it's like,
And they have an
whew.
answer for this too. Like Apple downplayed the concerns and said a manual review would review the evidence for possible misuse and
Right.
concerns to flooding victims with imagery that could cause them to get falsely flagged or shuttered. And it's
Yeah,
like
I bet.
they're just saying words, man. It's just like it's just like their billboard. They had this giant billboard I just saw. It was like Edward Snowden tweeted about it, and their big billboard says, "What happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone. Apple.com/privacy." And it's like,
Now, see, I
but
thought
in your terms of service, it says Apple reserves the right at any time from time to time to update, revise, supplement, and otherwise modify this agreement to impose new or additional rules, policy, terms, or conditions on your use.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, what happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone unless
Until
Apple
it
wants
doesn't.
it.
Yeah.
unless we decide it doesn't anymore.
Yeah, and
But
then Apple just takes it.
this is interesting because I thought Apple was a real front runner for protecting your privacy. You know, that's what I had really heard. I even talked to you guys about how I saw this thing where Apple was really kind of going against Google and how much Google has been invading our privacy through data collection and things like that. And they were starting to put in tools to mitigate Google's ability to do that, to harvest this data on you and stuff. And like you said, even all the way back to that Boston, I remember that being a really big deal. I remember people being like really upset at Apple for not going in and finding this stuff, and them really staunchly being like, no, we're not going to do that. I didn't know that they couldn't. I remember them saying like, we're not going to do that because it's too it's a slippery slope, right? Like we can't start doing that or else we can become like,
Well, that's the whole reason why if you forget like your Apple password or whatever, like you can't take it into the Apple store and get them to reset it for
Right.
you because
They don't
can't.
know.
They
Yeah,
don't know what your password
password
is, and there's no like, according to them, there's no back door. So now maybe what they were saying with the police and everything was like, okay, actually there is a back door. We just don't use it for regular peon people, but we're not gonna do it this time either because that would violate what we could tell all of our customers. But really, there is a back door. But we're just
Now
not
we've
gonna-
gotten so far down that slippery slope to where Apple's like, okay, we built it in. It's gonna automatically check for you.
Yeah.
oh my God, you know what this is? Oh shit, you know what this is? In Batman,
Yeah,
when he
the power
builds
that Batman
when
has.
he builds the cell phone surveillance system, and then he has to destroy it because he's like, it's too sketch. Like it's too sketch. Like they specifically say in that movie, he's like, you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking
I
about.
know
yeah,
exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
but he uses it. He's like, I'm gonna use it this one time. but
I'm gonna use it to beat this bad guy, but
yeah,
then
but
we're getting rid of it.
this is a slippery ass slope you're running on here, man. And I see that as the same thing. Like, yeah, you might get your bad guy here, but let this shit fall into the wrong hands and
But you won't
Exactly.
get your bad guy. I mean,
It's
you'll
a
get some
wrap
bad guys,
for
but that's the thing. Like, the comparison with the Joker thing is, like, he had one person to apprehend. This is not, like, this is equivalent to fighting the war on drugs or the war on terror. Like, you won't win that war. The war against child sex trafficking, unfortunately, will not be won. Because it's not a criminal war. It's a mental war. It's something that is inside the minds of individual people. And no amount of monitoring or whatever is going to get you to beat that. So this is why they really like having, and I'm talking about governments. Governments really like having amorphous enemies that they can use as an excuse to remove your privacy and your personal liberties, because if there's some sort of actual goalpost, like we all talk about goalpost moving, but I think that they're really upgrading their game in the last few years, where now they're just picking goalposts that are kind of not really, they don't really exist. Like it's like it's like Goku when he's running on Snake Way. You know, like that shit took like 15 episodes or something like you'll never really get to it. You'll never really get to the end. So they can continually have these programs in perpetuity and keep making new ones.
This is true.
And they'll be for new different things. And so it's like, this is
to make a caveat to what you're saying, I just want to clarify. Like you talked about, like I used to talk about this a lot with the war on terror, right? And since you said like a war on drugs, like we got more drugs on the street than we've ever had. Like the war on drugs, like what that doesn't mean they say, but same thing. Like I remember when we said the war on terror. I was like, what the fuck is terror? Like we're all terrorists. We're all have the potential to terrorize in some way. Like that's not an actual enemy. You know, like you said, that's an idea. Terrorism or terror is an idea, and you can't fight ideas with
monitoring
technology, bombs. You know,
by saying that we as citizens don't have privacy anymore, which is essentially what we know to be true now with the NSA revelations through Edward Snowden's, his whistleblowing and stuff like that. We as Americans are like, we don't want you using our data. We don't want you spying on us. And I want to kind of bring this conversation. I'm smushing two of these topics together because Apple confirmed about this scanning software. And now if you go to the Instagram channel, I sent you two links. One is an article telling you what this is, which is a private Israeli spyware that's used to hack cell phones of journalists and activists worldwide. Yeah. Which is what we're going to be talking about. It's called Pegasus. One of them, it kind of explains what that is, which is that one right there. If you scroll down just to the first paragraph, military-grade spyware licensed by an Israeli firm to governments for tracking terrorists and criminals was used in attempted and successful hacks of 37 smartphones belonging to journalists, human rights activists, business executives, and 2 women close to the murdered Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. So that is a real-life example. We all know what happened to Jamal Khashoggi. Like,
I don't know.
That dude got lured into an embassy in, I think, Turkey.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, so Jamal Khashoggi was a journalist working for one of these major places like New York Times or something like that. Yeah. And he wrote about the Saudi Arabian government, the royal family. He was a journalist who talked about Saudi stuff. Yeah. And Saudi Arabia had a 30-man something mercenary crew fly into Turkey where they knew he was going to get a marriage license at the consulate or something. They ambushed him when he came in. They dismembered him, got his body out of the country somehow. They sent out a doppelganger wearing his clothes to throw the trail off. Like they really did. There's a great visual investigation that they released about this as well, where they show you all literally step by step what they did. Yeah. To kill this man.
Yeah, but they literally hacked him up in the goddamn embassy and then took his body out in briefcases and shit.
Damn.
Yeah, so this is a
real
world example. Yeah, well that's what's come out in the last few days.
Yeah, they're saying that the Pegasus spyware was used to hack 2 phones that belonged to women
his wife
who
and
were
his
close
fiance.
to his.
Yes.
His wife and his fiance?
And his fiance. No, they're not. They're not the same person. They're different people. He has a wife, and then you can have multiple wives.
I just didn't know that he had other wives. I'd only heard about the one.
He had a wife and a fiance.
Like the idea that they could triangulate you based on your cell phone, right? Like this type of technology, I think, has always kind of existed, right? Like the government could always get at you if they wanted to, right?
Yeah, of course, the government
though, and like you said, not only the government, but they knew who they were getting after when they got after you. You know, it's this idea, and that's why I guess
they would need to get a warrant in some cases.
You know what I'm saying? Then they would go after you specifically. But this idea of eagle eye, you know, it's what
it's exactly eagle eye,
right?
Yeah.
It's essentially what we're building, where it's you even brought it up earlier too, Minority Report, right? Now it's once you've committed a crime, we're not using these technologies to come get you. We're now trying to use these technologies to be proactive against you doing these crimes. It's Minority Report, really.
We're also selling this to the highest bidder, meaning that this is something that's created by a firm or an agency, some private corporation, and is then being, hey, do you guys need to get onto an iPhone without a single click? Because this is no click technology. This is they send it to your iPhone and you don't ever have to accept an email. This isn't
this is not
like phishing.
Yeah, it's not phishing. This is literally just hacking. It's literally sending something to it and just being able to access photos, microphone, the screen, all that stuff. And now that it's going to the highest bidder, we see someone like Jamal Khashoggi get dismembered, and his wife and fiance both have this spyware on their phone. It's crazy. it's being used in this way, in this manner, by governments, by whoever can pay for it to just track you and kill you if they want to.
Chop you up into little pieces.
Yeah, they can. It's available to the highest bidder, and we talked about last episode how much money, or the 2 episodes ago, how much money do you think the Saudi royal family has?
Right.
A lot.
Like they can buy this up by the bucket loads. Yeah, man, makes me want to not have a phone, right? Yeah, but it's always like, like now I get why you always like, if you ever go on the run, step 1 is you got to smash your cell phone, right? Like that's step 1. Like if you decide that you're on the run or that you got to get the fuck out or whatever, like step 1 is you gotta, and to the point where it's like when you see people with tape over their webcam, and I used to always think, I'm like, man, you're being a little too paranoid, man. Like who's trying to turn on your webcam? Like, no, there's a lot of people out here trying to turn on your webcam.
Yeah,
like,
weirdos are trying to turn on your webcam.
There's a lot of motherfuckers out here who will really use
do it every day.
technology against you. Like, I was mad when they were just using it to run ads against me. You know what I mean? Like, I was just mad they were listening to my conversation so that they could run a fucking Google ad at me, let alone...
Now they're scanning every photo you take.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that is wild to me, man. Yeah. Wild to me. But I almost feel like, is there any way around this at this point?
Now that we have algorithms scanning our private photos, I don't know if there is any way around this.
It seems like the Achilles heel to technology is my point, right? Like that, just as technology and the internet and things have grown in popularity, one of the main things we talked about on the show is cybersecurity becomes a bigger deal. It opens up, the more connected we become, the more at risk we are to all these types of things. You talked about it a lot when we were just talking about data and how you were kind of already living in a fallacy world if you thought that you had any type of privacy as is. Like, there's just no such thing anymore.
I mean,
privacy. Like
there is privacy, but it's at a great inconvenience, and so that's the way around it. Like, as if you live in the fucking woods and you don't use a phone or the computer or any of that shit, and you chop your own goddamn wood, and you know 10 people. There's your privacy.
Yeah, but that's the back door of technology, though. Is it opens you up to this stuff. Like, there's nothing you can really.
And so unfortunately, I don't think that, like, people have this idea that somehow the government's going to come in and, like, stop these companies from doing stuff like this. And I think that's a really laughable idea, just because it's like, well, the government's not looking out for you. Like, the government has much more to gain by working with these companies than appeasing with you. Yeah. Like, what do you think you're going to do? And
now,
so
speaking of that, they said William Barr wrote a letter to or like an open essay thing advocating for this type of technology, in the sense that the CSAM technology, like advocating for police officers having access to that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course,
I mean, wasn't he the Attorney General?
Yes.
I mean, he's like he was the prosecutor for the entire country. So it's like,
make his life a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, the cops want to be able to arrest you for things that you may or may not have done, just to see if we'll look into it after we arrest you or some shit like that. And this is I think that really what it'll come down to is it'll be a certain amount of people will always complain about it, but continue to live in the society. A certain amount of people will cut themselves off from it entirely, and then the majority of people will just go along with the flow.
Oh yeah,
well, there could be a solution in laws created in Europe. This is still not allowed in a sense. So maybe in America, because if you think about it, it used to be like if you had something illegal in your phone, the cops would get a warrant, and then they would search your phone and find the illegal content.
Yeah.
Now that is being bypassed completely by you signing a user agreement. So now the companies can be like, hey, look at this illegal shit this person has. And then the police are like, thank you. We didn't have to ask for this or get a warrant. It's just presented to us by an algorithm now to where there's no legal step there. Yeah. So, maybe that's the answer is some sort of, maybe the legal action will catch up to this and the government might step in and be like, okay, private corporations, you can't just, scan everybody's stuff. But I don't see that happening.
No,
I
because
see
back
it.
to Mac's point, what incentive do they have for that?
They don't. They
You know what I'm
billionaires
saying?
writing about
Like-
how much he wants it.
Right.
They have
like,
no
they're-
incentive for that.
They're right in on it. My other question is that is like Apple the one that monitors all this, and then they just when they find something suspicious, like you said, they just turn it on over to the
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 same way
authorities?
Snapchat determines what is and is not,
Well-
what they're saving.
So
Yeah.
no, I'm imagining what's probably happening is that Apple is just giving that other organization that they're partnered with access. So the organization comes to them with this technology. They put it in their phones, and then the organization has access to whatever information that little technology feeds them. And so it's just an access point, which is all companies are as far as the government getting to your data. It's just an easier way for them to do it. And that's how I've always looked at it. It's like if the government wants your information, they could get it, but they might have to expend a lot more energy if they have to do it legally or in other ways. But if they can just go to the company that you're already just dumping your information into and get them to give it to them, that makes way more sense to them because it's much less intensive and it's a lot less steps and it's a lot less headache for
well,
them.
like John said, it circumnavigates the entire
the entire
process.
yeah.
The
The government doesn't like due process.
Yeah, no, it's a pain in the ass for them.
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. It costs them a lot of money.
The burden of proof, is like, it's funny how that's their whole job, is to create this burden of proof, but they're just looking for like any way to turn that into like the easiest job.
Yeah,
on the
where's
planet.
your evidence?
Yeah.
Fucking Google sent it right over.
It's right
buddy.
over,
We got a
man.
fax.
Yeah.
Fax machine's beeping right now.
Yeah,
There you go.
Can't help but think of how much it's Minority Report, because Minority Report is that too, right? Like it's this highly technology advanced world, right? And they create this system that can, assume murder before it happens, and it's like you kind of feel like we're getting closer and closer to that, right? Like it's closer and closer to that, where we just like monitor everything and everybody in every way that I have eagle eye, and then that way, if you even remotely think about breaking a law, it's a lot of law and a little bit of order.
Yeah,
It's just
good callback. Yeah.
right. Because dude, I saw the same thing about people claiming that the DNC was able to monitor people's text messages for vaccine misinformation. You seen this?
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's the DNC.
Yeah.
CDC maybe.
I just remember that some sort of government organization is looking into monitoring people's SMS messages to weed out COVID misinformation.
Yeah.
USA Today with the good old fact check.
Yeah. And July 12th, about the Biden administration's response to COVID-19, Biden ally groups, including the Democratic National Committee, are also planning to engage fact checkers. Oh, wait, hold on. Yeah, more aggressively and work with SMS carriers to dispel misinformation about vaccines that is sent over social media and text messages. Biden wants phone companies to monitor your text for vaccine misinformation, claims a July 13th Instagram post. The falsehood has also circulated in conservative news outlets. I think they're going to explain why. Oh, it doesn't involve monitoring or controlling private text messages, and the Biden administration is not involved. Said the claim was false on several accounts. They're not. They just pretty much said, "Nah, we ain't doing that." Of course, the DNC has no ability to access or read people's private text messages, and we're not working with any government agency, including the White House, to try to see personal text messages. He wrote. Okay,
So they basically just reached out to them and was like, "Hey, you
Is
doing
this
this?"
true? And they were like, "Nah." And they were like, "All right, cool."
That's bunk.
Yeah.
Fact check.
Fact check.
It's like,
That's what it seems
so
like to
funny.
me.
Oh my god. We asked the guy and he said, "Nah."
Wait, when the DNC.
Yeah,
Did
we
you
asked the
murder
guys,
that guy? And
they
he's like
said,
holding
"Nah."
the knife. He's like, "Nah." It's fact check, bro. I just fucking fact check that.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's right. Like, it seems pretty feasible. I mean, the technology's obviously there. Like, they could
course.
do it if they wanted to, but they're not. So it's like,
Well, the whole idea of making it's funny. People forget that this has been a thing since forever. The whole idea of phone carriers being regarded as public utilities and therefore not liable for whatever happens on their platforms. The whole idea was because they'd know if you were doing illegal shit through the phone, and they could be held liable for that.
Yeah.
So they were like, yo, look, by the way, we need to go ahead and just talk to you bigwig cats over in Washington, because there's a lot of people doing a lot of illegal shit with our phones, and we just want to make sure that you guys aren't coming at us with that. And they're like, nah, we'll write something up and we'll make sure that AT&T's good. You're good. Don't worry about it.
I hope the post office stays out of cahoots with.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah, I was
bro.
gonna say.
It's not out of it. Are you kidding me? There's a whole you didn't see this thing I posted on my stories about how there's a whole investigative arm of the post office that like monitors shit. Oh God, I wish I could.
You're bringing us to a great point, Mac. Like that's gonna
Reason
lead
did a
into
whole
your
article.
topic too.
Yeah, that's true. Reason
Because,
did a whole
like,
article about it. About the I can't remember. It's like the USPS or something like that. But they had this whole program where they were monitoring people's social media platforms to like corroborate if they were like doing illegal shit with the mail. And I was like, don't we have like, why does the post office have like FBI dudes? You know what I mean? Like, you imagine getting arrested by the post office?
Where the post office police is at the
Well, like
It's
how
crazy.
and it's crazy too because you're talking about like the post office. We were talking about the phone. Like never before were they like, you know what? We don't think you should be able to have a printing press. You shouldn't be allowed to, put like write down that information we don't agree with. You know what I'm saying? Like the phone we have freedom of speech, so it's like, are we saying that like if you have speech that we don't agree with, then you're not allowed to have a phone? Or
well,
not
the freedom
allowed
of speech part doesn't really come into play, especially with the phones, because the whole idea is that you're doing illegal things, and the freedom of speech doesn't cover anything that's illegal.
Yeah, yet. Yeah. It's under
do you mean
assault.
yet?
Freedom, I'm just saying, freedom of speech is definitely under assault from
It's
every
definitely under assault, but it's
angle,
never
left and right.
never covered anybody for doing anything illegal.
Right.
Well, that's the thing. What is hate speech illegal in America?
What's determined
It's not.
illegal?
Well, that's the
right,
problem,
yeah.
is that the people who are supposed to be guarded by the Constitution and the rules that are set within it are also the people that decide what is and is not illegal. So it's like, how exactly is that supposed to work out long term? Because once they figure out that all they have to do is make the things that they don't like illegal, then the freedom of speech doesn't really cover it. And so now you're just arguing about whether something is or is not properly legal. And it's like, you're probably going to lose that battle.
Yeah. Super sketch. Yeah, Matt, we was talking a lot about your point too. I think that this does like segue pretty.
Yeah, mine's pretty much exactly the same.
heavily
It's just,
into-
I was so fascinated at this PayPal ADL partnership that happened. It sounds like it's happening right around the same time as this Apple thing. But the ADL is the Anti-Defamation League, for those of you who don't know. It's a private organization that, well, in the 70s, it was actually like a really awesome organization that did a lot of work to help people who were bringing cases, like lawsuits for freedom of speech. They were like a really big proponent of freedom of speech in the 70s. Alan Dershowitz used to work a lot with them when he was, because Alan Dershowitz is one of the biggest First Amendment lawyers that we've had in the last, 100 years. He's pretty old. But he basically, over the years, it's become more like leftist. I mean, I guess freedom of speech was always kind of supposed to be a leftist idea, but it's now leaned more towards like the woke-ish side of all of that. And so now they're partnering with PayPal in an attempt to fight to cut off the payment avenues for organizations that deal with extremism and hate crimes and violence and stuff like that. So the way that they talk about it in this article from the ADL is basically, we're looking to cut off the financial revenue streams and the movement of money within these organizations that, like the KKK or white nationalists and stuff like that, is who I'm assuming. They don't particularly name any organization specifically. Yeah. And so again, like that seems like, yeah, I don't want white nationalists able to move their money around and organize and stuff like that. Like that makes sense to a point. But the part that got me, and as far as I'm concerned, PayPal is a private organization. It doesn't have to service whoever they don't want to, whether I agree with it or not. But the part that got me so interested in it was that just one time in this entire article, they also mention anti-government organizations. And I was like, well, wait a minute now. Anti-government organizations? Like, that's interesting. Because, like, you could make a case that there's a lot of, like, Reason Magazine.
I'm an anti-government.
Yeah, like, I'm severely anti-government. And I use PayPal for my clothing and stuff like that. So I'm like, if they find me posting some shit on Facebook and then or on Instagram and they're like, oh, wait a minute, this dude's got a shop with PayPal, not anymore, and just like shut down. Like,
take your ass to Parlor. Get out of here and go to Gab.
Yeah, and so the part about this that got me was that, you know, these are all good ideas at first. Like, you know, you want to clamp down on child sex trafficking. That's a good idea. You want to clamp down on the purse strings of violent organizations. That's a good idea. But the problem is, like I said earlier, you leave, like, you know, these companies and these governments don't give back any powers. So as soon as you give them the authority to do something, they're going to keep doing it. They're going to find more reasons to do it. And so once you open up that door, there's no telling how much is going to come through it. And so my biggest issue with all of these types of things that are going on right now. Did you just bring up the 9/11 Commission?
Yeah, bro, that's a huge. It's 155 pages on terrorist finance. You might want to go to the Wikipedia entry. Okay. I'm pretty sure it was Western Union, but yeah.
You just went to the appendix of it, which is also 22 pages.
Okay, look, I just want to know. Like, I'm like sitting here the whole time you're talking. I'm like, so you trying to tell me that 9/11 was funded through PayPal? Like,
it was funded through like Western Union and wire transfers of like money type shit.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
But that's what they're trying to get at, right? Hate groups and stuff like you said. I think that they would probably go KKK, but maybe because that's the hate group of the day. You know, we're really against the white supremacy groups. But like, I mean, you know, 5-6 years ago. 10 years ago, like 10, 15 years ago, you was really trying to stop these terrorist organizations from being able to like fund their crazy plans.
Oh, don't you know? White nationalists are domestic terrorists. Oh, it's all part of it.
Okay, so
it's all one umbrella now.
It's all one umbrella.
Yeah.
See, when they make the thing for terrorists, then all they have to do is find a way to call you a terrorist,
right.
And then you fall under the same jurisdiction as all these other things.
You just widen the net, baby.
You just
How do you catch more fish?
Yeah.
You just widen the net.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, and I thought that was funny because as I, you know, knowing who the ADL is now and kind of like what they've become, I was like, I bet you they don't do shit to Antifa's money. I bet you Antifa be moving money like crazy on PayPal and don't nobody be saying nothing. Yeah. I don't know that for sure, but if I had to guess, Antifa would be on the lowest level of the list of organizations that they're trying to cut money off of.
You're like suppositioning that maybe the ADL picks who's the more I mean, they do, right? Like
they do. That's exactly why they're partnering with them. Yeah.
Who is?
Because if PayPal wanted to just cut your money off, they wouldn't need the ADL to do it.
Right. They're like,
so they're getting the ADL to be like, hey,
you tell us who to cut off.
Exactly. We'll give you access to the organizations who are moving money around on our platform, and with that information, you can tell us who's doing bad shit out here.
Yeah.
And all I'm saying is that I have a very hard time believing the ADL is going to look at any of this stuff objectively.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
I just don't like it being in a bureaucratic, arbitrary line drawing hands of like someone somewhere, like YouTube. Like it's like someone somewhere on YouTube is deciding like when that is all or not, or when this is this or that.
Right.
And there's a lot of weird shit.
Because that's I don't like about it either. It's like these are just like all these organizations. Apple. The ADL, like the Apple was teamed up with somebody too for the eradication of child something or other. Like, you gotta understand, these are just people. It's like charities, right? Like just because somebody comes out and they say we're a charitable organization, that what does that mean? Like, you don't know what these people are actually doing with your money, or like what these people do, and who leads these organizations. They're private organizations. They don't have to answer to anybody or report to anybody. And in a sense, like, you know, so it's like the ADL is just like, yeah, we be doing good out here, and everybody's like, okay, yeah. And then now they are getting actual tools to create real ramifications in your life. And that's sketch.
And I thought that you kind of brought up a really interesting point earlier when you were talking about like who comes up with this at Apple. And it's like, well, once these corporations get so big, you know, like that's why when you talk to, I think people get too big on like Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg, and like they call in these CEO dudes, like the CEO dudes know what the fuck's going on the ground level of all of these, you know, headquarters that they work at. And it's like, oh, well, they can't come out there and say, I didn't know that the people I employ were doing that, because that's a bad look. So they have to say, I'll get back to you on that one, which is like Jack Dorsey's favorite thing to say when anybody asks him anything. But I think that that's just because these corporations are so big and they've got so many people underneath them that it's really impossible to control what they're all doing and what direction they're all moving in. And so you have these little pockets, you know, it only takes a handful of people,
one department
to come up with a project and meet with some people, because like it's the same thing that happens with like shoe collaborations at Nike. Everybody thinks like everybody at Nike knows about it, but really it's like 10 people at Nike know about this big collaboration with this really big artist, because everybody else is doing their own fucking thing and making new other shoes and stuff. So it's like you really only need a handful of people to enact some of these programs, and then once they get going, it's really hard to pull them back.
My biggest point when you brought this up, and with the Apple thing too, in the situation, right, is I talked to you about this in the kitchen. I said, damn, in a way we asked for this, you know, like in a way we wanted this. And I know that there's a lot of people who do want this, but even some of the screeching, people didn't really know what you were opening stuff. And what I mean is, one of the biggest complaints or concerns about millennials and things, millennials going forward, is we wanted our businesses to have a conscience. Right? Like we as millennials, we wanted our government, or not our government, but our businesses to care about the climate. We wanted them to care about, you know, social injustice. Right? There's all these issues that we felt like we were facing as a society, and we really started to put a lot of leverage on private organizations to be like, you have to stand for something, right? Or we're gonna cancel you.
You can't just sell hot dogs, bro. You gotta make a political stance.
We want you to know what do you stand for, right? And so now you have all these companies out here really scrambling to pick up some type of mission, you know, to really sit here and say like, hey, we're against child sex trafficking, and everybody's like, yeah, okay, yeah,
we're against extremism. We want to fight it,
right? And they're like, oh, okay, cool. It's virtue signaling from your organizations now. And it's annoying when people do it, okay? But it's a fucking crime when we're seeing these guys. Because when we say, hey, you need to pick up a cause, you assume that they're going to pick up your cause.
Yeah, you could be the cause of the People's Republic of Korea.
You think they're gonna save the dolphins or some shit, but they might pick something completely left field that you just didn't really know,
something that you're totally against,
right?
And you're like, damn, I don't like Android. I don't want to have to move over to Android because now Apple's doing all this fuck shit. And I'm not saying that I'm just saying,
but I'm like, all these things like PayPal, we don't need you to fight. We have a homeland security. Okay, we created an entire arm of government to do this for us. We don't need you, PayPal. Like, it's cool, chill. Did nobody ask for your fucking help?
Money can go through 1,000 different ways.
Channels.
You know, like PayPal is just one of many different services where you can send money worldwide. So it's like, I mean, it's once again like. I see what they're going for.
Right.
You know, they're going for this idea of like, we want to be, you know, helping the fight against these terrible things. And it's like, no, you just want people to use your service because they think you're morally superior to the other banks.
100%, right? It just, that's what it feels like. But there is real ramifications because, I mean, okay, there's not, because you even lended to it too, right? Like, terrorists can go to Cash App, don't give a fuck. So, you know what I mean? Like, use Cash App then, right? Venmo, right? Like, and then that's a lot of the same argument that'll be used against us screeching minorities. It's like, well, if you don't like it, just use Android. And it's like, well, fuck you, bitch. Like, how long until I can't? There is no cell phone left for me to use because everybody picked up some type of thingy thought. Yep. You know, we got PayPal out here. We got it's getting more and more to the point where that old age-old trope of like, well, just move on over to BitChute. It's like, you know, it's like so many of these places. I don't know, man. There's really gonna grow a market. I'll tell you that though. There's gonna be here in the next 10 to 20 years. I really foresee a huge market growing for those types of establishments, right? Like a restaurant that doesn't ask for your vaccine passport, right? Like a financial transactional platform that doesn't give a fuck about who's using it or whatever. Like that market is increasing by the day.
Oh yeah, I mean, Dave Rubin has his platform Locals that he's always promoting, and it's basically that like you go on there and as a creator, like you can create kind of your own little. It's like a combination between a website and a social media page, sort of. But you create this little thing, and then I think the lowest you have to subscribe to like interact in the page. So your subscribers, I think, for like as low as $2 a month, which keeps out like bots and stuff like that. And then you can monitor. You do whatever you want with it. Yeah. And he
like
said, and he was like, look, as long as you don't do anything illegal on it, we're not gonna kick you off.
Right.
And so like that's that's already starting.
What's illegal? You know what I mean? Like,
well, that's the liability part.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so unfortunately, that'll always be.
That's always
on
gonna
top
be
of,
like in anything, right? Like, you know what I mean? That's the part that can always come back and bite you in the butt.
And they can say they won't kick you off, but there's no law or protection to the consumer.
Yeah, that's what you're just taking their word.
You can't be kicked off.
Yeah. But I would imagine like if a platform's built solely with that being their shtick, right? And then you start fucking that up, then you're gonna
shadow
lose your
ban,
entire,
baby.
Yeah,
well,
shadow ban, baby. John,
well, it's funny that you say that because Twitter is actually like that was how Jack Dorsey described Twitter when he first made it. Was the Wild West of the internet. Nobody would categorize it that now. Like people get kicked off of Twitter for all kinds of nonsense, right? And so it's like
weird how that.
Once you get big enough,
once you get called into Congress 2 or 3 times, you really start to kind of. Which is
that'll change the way you speak about it.
It starts changing your tune real quick because that's a really precious. That's where I'm at with it too, and I think that was the point that you were talking about making was like those guys, them boys is getting a lot more
together.
Jen
Psaki was on.
I caught them holding hands behind
TV.
the bleachers.
Jen Psaki was on goddamn national television talking about like we flag posts for Facebook to let them know that hey, we don't like what these people said. Facebook, we might have to slap a little bit of regulation on you if you don't do something about that. And so Facebook's like, it's like that fucking. It's like that little video I posted to my stories with that where it was like, would you be intimidated to date a woman with more money than I saw you? And the guy was like, what's that? Oh, you want me to make mimosas and breakfast for you? Sure I will. That's what Facebook is doing, right? Yeah, play it. It's great.
I'll play it.
You can't go to you'll have to go to I don't know if you can go to your stories. Yeah, and then you can go to like your archive.
I'm not logged in. We played it for you.
I'll put it in here, yeah.
Would you date a woman who makes more money than you? Or would that be too intimidating?
What'd you say, dear? Oh, you want me to make you mimosas and breakfast? Sure, I will. You want me to wear the maid outfit too, or what do you...
There you go. And so, I feel like it's just like that. Like, the government's coming through, and it's like, hey, you mind banning these people for me? And he was like, sure, I will. Absolutely. What do you need, baby? Yeah, you want me to ban these other people too? They're kind of like them. Like, yeah.
Which you get though, right? Like mass regulation could fuck up their whole business model, their whole profit situation, or they can kick off these 2, 3, 4 people that these people want you. And you can see how they could be in this kind of mob strong arm with the government, you know. But it's sketch because those were always supposed to be private entities, and they're not supposed to get mixed up in government shit, and government's not supposed to get mixed up in their shit. But I mean, every single day we're seeing them more and more the responsibilities that you would expect to be that of the governments seems to be falling more and more onto private organizations,
Corporate legislation,
tech companies,
Yeah,
particularly.
it's searching for encrypted data that could be illegal or compromising is now not something that's being done by an investigative arm in the government,
Right.
whether local or federal. It's
Or
being done by
Apple?
Mr. CEO Mark Zuckerberg, Apple man.
Fucking what? What?
Tim Apple.
The CEO of Steve Jobs is now, or CEO of Apple is now like also like the lead FBI agent. Shit, like what the fuck is going on out here? And it's a slippery slope, man. I don't see how. I mean, I guess I see how other people who are really absorbed in, because like you said, you feel like you're doing a real, like y'all read the message, like y'all saw the memo. Like these are not bad people. They're not. They really feel like they're
Doing
on
the right
a
thing.
mission to do the right thing, right?
And the worst part is that doing this probably will catch people who are trafficking children.
It'll grab a couple.
But again, like the ends don't justify the means. You
Not
know?
necessarily. It's slippery slope. That's just all it really comes down. But this is, I get tired of saying slippery slope. Like, how far are we down?
Yeah.
How far have we been sliding?
Exactly.
You
Well,
know?
think about it like this, bro. Okay, so back in the day, you had a telephone. Yeah, they could bug it. Like they could,
Right.
if they had a reason, they could bug your telephone.
Right.
Now it's like,
You're bugged.
your camera's bugged. Your
Yeah.
video camera's
You're born
bugged.
bugged.
Your telephone's bugged. Like everything's bugged. Your TV's
Yeah.
bugged because
Yeah.
your phone is everything.
Yeah.
So your gaming console is bugged. Like,
And
your
no
piece of
warrant
paper
needed.
that you write on is bugged.
Like you said, no warrant needed, no nothing, man. It's just,
No.
and I thought about that too, because I was like, this isn't really anything new. Like, think about back in the Cold War era. Like, you were really encouraged to call out your neighbors. Like, they used the civilian population to do this. I heard Bob down the street was saying some very anti-patriotic things, and then they would come knock on your door and ask you some questions and shit.
Big in North Korea as well.
Right. So
On current day.
yeah, so it's you can see the constant evolution of the same situation, and if that's what I was starting this, I don't see how you can't see how this ends in your technology's worst nightmare, right? That's why we brought up so many movies, The Matrix.
It ends with that
Minority
robot
Report.
sitting on your couch saying, just constantly
Right.
scanning you for illegal activity.
Right? You know what I'm
You
saying?
go outside to smoke something, he like pops his head out. Is that weed?
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah,
tobacco,
exactly.
Mr. Robot.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm gonna come out here and
watching.
test the air later. So
Dead ass. Like, imagine your iRobot just starts arresting you one day. Like, you come out
Yeah.
you come out the bathroom, you wash your hands, like, put your hands up. What did I do?
Put 'em up.
Now,
Turn
we
around,
heard-
spread 'em.
we heard what you were thinking last night. You're going to fucking jail, mister. Like, what?
Neural hash went into your brainwave and found out what you were thinking about last night. Mr. Swanson, it speaks up from your pocket. Stand up straight.
Dead ass. Right? Dude, I love that you brought that because you said neural hash, but then it made me think of, like, the neural link, right?
I
And,
thought the
like,
same thing.
right.
I was like, anybody that puts that in their brain now is a
Right?
dummy.
Now it's
You're a
like,
dummy.
I can't fuck with it. Elon, cancel it. I don't even want that shit out there,
We're going to
dog.
scan your thoughts for child.
Yeah!
Do you think about children? You touch yourself.
Gotcha.
Bro. And then
Gotcha,
we're in
buddy.
it. And now we're full on in it. You're full on in it. Because it's another thing, too. It's like, I was talking to Jessica about this. And I was explaining to her about slippery slopes and shit like that, right? And I say, it's easy to forget where we sit now that the Nazis rose to power amongst applause and celebration. You see what I'm saying?
It wasn't like a forceful takeover.
It wasn't like no, like everybody
Oh,
thought
welcome.
that this was about to be the greatest thing that could ever happen to Germany. You see what I'm saying? Like just like in Star Wars, right? Like democracy dies and a thunderous applause. Okay, it doesn't. It's easy looking back to say, oh, we would see Hitler coming. No, you would not.
No, you wouldn't.
You would not see him coming. You would not. You would vote for him in. And then you would applaud his every move on the way to your fucking utter destruction and demise, or the utter demise of a third of the entire planet, right? And so it's like same thing with this type of shit, man. I know it seems right now you're doing the right thing, you're doing a good thing, and all these things, but you really gotta stop and just ask yourself, like, yo, 20 years, extrapolate this. Like, how could I see this turning out not the way I thought it could be? You know?
Without precautions or safety measures built in. And that's the one thing they try to pound you over the head with in these articles. Even in that TechCrunch article, I went a little bit further down. They're just pounding you with, okay, they can do this right now. Yeah. But they only decrypt them if they think for whatever. And it's like, bro, that's right now.
Now, though.
But like 2 steps down this pathway is them saying, well, we could read everything that you type as you type it. So if you type wrong speech, that can be used against you. And, you know, how far along this chain until you get cancel bot scanning everything you do?
Dude, 100%. Especially when we live in a world of executive orders. You know, like when do you just, you don't know, you're just going to vote that one wrong person in that just like flips it on you, you know? And then it's like, you didn't see it coming, you know? You didn't even see it coming. You thought you were winning, and then all of a sudden you're pinned on the map. You know, it's like,
you thought you were winning, and then all of a sudden a Spot Mini knocks on your door with a pair of handcuffs in its front grip. Just come with me.
Yeah, man. And you know what I hate the most about it? You know what I hate the most about it? They got me, dude. They got me. Cause like, I'm not getting rid of my iPhone.
Yeah, no, they got me too. You know, I got a webcam. They're looking at me right now.
I'm not coming off of YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I hate to see it, and I'll bitch and complain about it all day from the seat. I'm going to sit here and tell all of us, hey, be careful. But I'm walking right into it like a dum-dum, and I know you are too, and it sucks.
I'll be sitting in the Discord server talking mad sedition against my government. They can come to my door at any time. Knock, knock, knock. Yeah. Spot Mini's here.
Yeah, dude, seriously. That's the worst part about it to me, because I wish that I had that type of willpower to be like, but it's got too much benefit to me in my life, you know? I mean, I'll quit using PayPal. I was already kind of off PayPal. You know what I mean? PayPal was already on the decline for me. Anyways, I've been moving towards like Venmo and Cash App and stuff. But, I mean...
Just so you know, PayPal owns Venmo, so you'll have to come off that too.
All right. Well,
man, you got me.
Your options get thinner and thinner. You know, thinner and thinner.
All of a sudden, you're gonna be using Bitcoin and cash. You're not gonna have anything else.
Because like, I'll tell you where I did draw. I drew that staunch line with the vaccine, right? Like, I ain't getting that shit. If that means I gotta eat by myself outside like Steven fucking Glansberg, well then so fucking be it. Okay, I'll just make my own.
Until you try to force me
fucking food. But I love the internet, bro. Like, I mean, I'm sorry. Like, obviously, I live on the internet, so anything that deals with technology really just breaks my soul, because I know they got me. Like, I know that I'm like, I love you so much, technology. Like, why you?
At what level would it be like? Cox Internet provider and the data service you use requires you to prove like at what stage?
Vaccine, yeah, like, please upload your passport so that we can renew your service. And yeah, that'll be
internet is
as
not
a real
right
thought
at this
experience.
Point, so.
If we get to that point, then I'm really just out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm out. So,
I guess I'll just go kill myself. I guess I'll just jump off I guess I'll never see you guys again.
But I told Magnus with this vaccine passport, like, people, this pushing for to make people prove they are vaccinated and stuff, it scares me. I do have a tipping point. I tell Mac that too. I'm like, there's too much of this shit, and I will do that. I will become the woods guy. Like, I tell Mac the other day on the way to the back, I was like, yep, they're pushing me even further towards the 2Gs, man. Like, starting this garden and getting this fucking gun and just hanging out in the Teton Mountains somewhere. Like, leave me the fuck alone. I ain't fucking with y'all no more.
I'm excited. Well, not excited, but like, I'd be interested to see if that happens. You reminded me of this guy I used to work with that like some dude, like a customer, called a cashier a bitch, and this guy was like, you know, like doing the bagging the groceries, and he didn't do anything. But then when he started telling everybody, he's like, yeah, man, that guy called her a bitch, and I said I was gonna take him outside, whoop his ass. And I was like, nah, you didn't. And he was like, yeah, but I said so. I said it to him though, and I was like, no, you didn't say nothing. You just stood there, bro. You just let that guy call that girl a bitch, and you just handed him his groceries. That's gonna be me. I was gonna be handing the groceries to Amazon. That's just me. Just like, hey man, yep. Sorry, bro. Like, I'm gonna tell everybody else though. Yo, privacy. I told him though they couldn't have my data. No, you didn't. Yeah, you're right. I didn't.
I did. I was thinking it though. I was thinking it.
No, you weren't even thinking it.
No,
It's that skit from Key and Peele. He's like, but you said that though? He's like, yeah, I said that.
Oh, yeah, the one with the wife where he's like, I told my wife right in her face.
I said, bitch.
Yeah, same concept. It's just like you talking all that big smack now, but when they say, hey, we need proof for the internet, you're gonna be like, yeah, I really want that.
You're gonna do it. You're gonna do it. That's just what it comes down to, it, man. It sucks to have to admit your own sheepishness and to realize that like you're being herded out here, and you don't really get a lot of say in what happens with Apple or what happens with your government or any of that stuff. You just go with the flow, Try your best.
You just accept the nanobots.
Use your VPN and just do the best you can out here, man. That's all you can do.
Put the piece of tape over your webcam. That's all you got, buddy.
Gotta live.
I thought about like whenever I record, like if I'm taking a story of something on my computer, I can see. Like the camera can see these little flashing sensors and stuff at the bottom of my computer.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, it's so funny. Like I'm sure a lot of modern computers have these sensors because it's got like it'll like dim the screen or go black if I'm not looking at it for a certain amount of time, and then when I look at it, it'll brighten back up.
Wow. And
so like it knows that I'm looking at it, and I'm like, that's being done by the sensors. It's not being done by the camera. So like even if you covered the camera. Like they're still getting you. For a while, like maybe the last month or so, I had been experimenting with trying to get Google out of my life as much as possible, just to see. I'm like, okay, well, how much do I really have to do to like mitigate it? But it's so much. Like, did you know?
Yeah.
It's an unbelievable amount of effort to get these motherfuckers out of your shit. It's so crazy. Did you know that the VPN that we pay for logs our information? So all they need is somebody to come and ask for the information, and then they can have it. It's just creating one extra little step for them. And I was like, well, shit. Now using the VPN don't even I can't even pirate these goddamn movies in privacy. Like what the fuck?
No, there is no consumer protection. Your
way.
Internet is no longer the Wild West.
There's just no way.
And
man.
so I think that's. I mean, I also have a line. My line isn't very it's a pretty far line. Like you'd have to really start like knocking on people's doors because I went back to I was like, you know what? Using this weird I was using like a proxy app for YouTube and a proxy app for the Google Play Store and all this stuff. And I was like, why am I doing if I really wanted to, I could just get a dumb phone. I could just go back to a flip phone and it would be done. Yeah. But I'm not going to do that. So why am I making it so difficult?
True.
It's like I'm making it 10,000 times more difficult for myself when for Google and all these other companies tracking you, it's marginally a little bit more difficult. And I'm like, the juice isn't worth the squeeze on that one. I'm just going to watch YouTube.
They know they got you. They know they got you.
On the proxy, you couldn't close your phone and have the shit keep running. I was like, bruh.
Dude.
If YouTube can do it, how can you not build an app that can still do that? Like, what the fuck?
Dude, you hit it on the head when you were talking about those sensors and stuff, and I started thinking about how I was like, yeah, they don't even need to see you on the camera. They could just read your fingerprints from you holding the phone.
They can see where you're looking. They can see where you're looking at on the screen.
Yeah, they track that shit. And people, I turn off my location shit and I don't use it. Right. I'm like, yeah, but they track you with the telephone towers, so it's and you can never turn that off. So what are you talking about?
You can't hide out here.
There's no hiding.
Here. I'll wait for it. Like you said, if it comes to that, if it really comes out, if I see motherfuckers walking around with the barcode scanner and shit, you goddamn right, I'll snap my phone. I'll run for the mountains so quick.
Yeah,
but
that'll be the least of our concerns, I think. By the time something like that happens, I think that if it does happen, I think we'll be in full blown
dystopia.
Rebellion, dystopian type shit. So you'll want to get out and move to the woods just so that you don't get blown up by some sort of IED or some shit like that.
When Mad Max pops off, we're not going to be worrying too much about.
Yeah, nobody's going to give a shit about how much your phone is tracking.
No, but that's what I'm saying. When we deteriorate, that's when I'll go there.
Yeah.
When we deteriorate, because I hate it. I remember we had the protopian conversation. I feel you, dog. But when I'm just being completely honest, this always ends up in apocalyptic ruin to me. Like I don't see a way forward that doesn't, we're teeter-tottering now. Like we're just Why
do you think they're trying to go to space?
Fucking, you know what I mean? Balancing by a thread. But it really only takes one more crazy motherfucker like that, like a dictatorship type deal or anything of that situation, an agitation event, right? As you called it, John. Like we're one agitation event away from all this shit getting flipped on you. Are we gonna flip it on them? Yeah. Flip mode.
Yeah, I fell down and bumped my head.
The greatest.
He said, "Oh, you flip mode now." I said, "See, Sam, scan all your photos. It's the greatest."
Hey, flip mode's the greatest. I mean, it's that's where I'm at with it. Those are my final takeaways from this whole situation, man. Stop treating people with mental health disorders or weird people or whatever. I don't care if they're rich or they're poor or whatever, man. You just don't know what their situation is. Maybe they're not fully control of their capabilities, and that's a scary thought. Like you said, like I understand why we're apprehensive against people who might not be in control of their faculties. That's probably why the government keeps trying to restrict you because they don't trust you're in control of your own faculties, and they're afraid of you as well. So like I get
just in case you were wondering.
You're not, so it's like, we all have the potential to just
you're not
flip the fuck out in here.
Faculties.
So, century of the self, as John said, it's all just bubbling under the surface there, you know.
What I take away from your topic is pretty simple. It's just that I should have more empathy for the people that I see. Like when I talk about everybody watches those videos of public freakouts and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think about those videos and I watch them from time to time. Like it's something that sucks me in. It's like true crime.
Sure.
It's like, real characters having a real story. But I don't think about the empathy of it.
Right.
Or like, how did that person get there? I always think about like what's happening.
Right.
Explain what's going on.
Right.
Oh, these people laughed at those crackheads when they came out on their front porch, and now this guy's spraying them with a water hose and they're all fighting. And it's like, you don't think about the mental health or the fact, like, why is that person addicted to methamphetamine? They could have been abused as a child. And, I'm sitting here laughing at this crackhead yelling at this lady when that crackhead could be a really nice woman who just had a terrible childhood.
That's
just be on a bad crack trip.
But that's my takeaway to a T. Just because people are fucked up doesn't mean that they're bad. Is where I'm at with it, right? And then with that other shit, like I said, I mean, I wish I could see it going some other way, but every day we kind of concede more and more to the system. We just more and more we give away a little bit, and I don't see it stopping. I mean, just from a personal point, like I'm not stopping, so I don't see anybody else. So it's just like, be ready to flip that switch one day. When they flip mode, you better be ready to flip mode too.
You better have your tough box full of dried foods. You
better get those G's
I
going.
hate to admit that I'm starting. I mean, I hate to admit that I be trying to stockpile water.
I used to have a zombie bug out box.
I got
like 2013, 14. Yeah.
I used to laugh at doomsday preppers, but now it just seems like a good insurance plan to me.
Oh yeah, I mean it's likely.
I want to buy one of those old cars that doesn't have electrical like chips in it. Yeah, so I can just during Mad Max I can just fire up the 71 Camaro and just take off.
This is I'm just gonna give you a little bit of a pointer here on that, John. You don't want anything that requires external resources to operate. What you want to do is you want to get a bicycle. A bicycle is an extremely simple machine that doesn't require a lot of extra stuff to operate, and it never runs out of fuel.
Okay, take a bicycle and put it into Mad Max.
I just picture Mad Max. He's riding the bicycle.
He's just like pedaling to that song when they
Mad Max is not
fucking armored tour buses. Like
the whole point is that when you're on a bicycle, nobody knows where you're at because you can be somewhere where cars aren't.
True.
For me, I think for the first part, it's I guess a little bit of my like cold-heartedness is gonna come out in the sense like using that video of the woman on the plane as an example. I wouldn't film her and like post it online later or with anything like that, but I've never had a problem with laughing at other people privately. Like I've always said, like if I'm with my homies and we're at the mall and we see somebody come in and they're dressed all crazy or they slip and fall or something like that, like I'm a laugh. Like, you know, now I'm not gonna go up to them in their face and be like,
bully
look at you, you stupid bitch, you slipped and fell, or oh, look at how dumb this dude's dressed, and start fucking with them. But to myself and to my homies, I'm gonna laugh at them.
I made this point to my kid. I got just interject because I made the same point to my kid. I was like, we were talking about judging people and stuff, and I was like, look, let me tell you something. It's not wrong to judge people, okay? I was like, I judge motherfuckers every goddamn day.
You can't
what's
not
wrong?
do it.
Yeah, you can't not do it. I was like, what's wrong is to go and treat those people like they're less than based on your judgments of them.
Right,
you know?
exactly.
But the idea that you're coming up with judgments, I was like, that's not the wrong part. Like, some people be ugly to me. That just is what it is. I'm not gonna run up and tell them to their face like, you an ugly son of a bitch, you know that? But
well, and
I do be thinking people ugly.
Yeah, and then people like, you can't discriminate. And I'm like, people discriminate all the time. Like, you discriminate when you're picking your significant other.
Sure.
Like, gay people discriminate against all the straight people.
Sure.
So how is that, like, what are you talking about? You discriminate the shit out of us.
Sure.
So that's my take, is like, yes, I've learned to be more empathetic to people like that, and I understand that there always is something underlying those issues, but you know, sometimes should be funny. And then with the other thing, it's like, yeah, you know, like, there's not a lot that we can do on our own other than stop using this stuff. And so that's the hard part. It's like, people want to have their cake and eat it too. So they want to, like, the government, who they somehow think is like so evil in certain things, you know, when it comes to war, they hate the government. But when it comes to big tech, people love the fucking government. They want the government to come in and save them. And I'm like, bro, the only way that you can save yourself from Twitter is for you to stop using Twitter and to convince as many people as you possibly can to stop using Twitter. And hopefully enough people will do that to where Twitter starts losing money and changing their policies. But that's not going to happen. So you might as well just deal with whatever Twitter's doing or go somewhere else.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, fall in line. Toe the
and
line,
get your
buddy.
2G's.
Yep.
You got anything, John?
I've enjoyed this conversation. It's been a little all over the place. But I've enjoyed this conversation. I think I did take away on your stuff, Rod, but to kind of just touch on Mac's stuff, like my big takeaway with that is like, I'm just worried about freedom of speech. I understand, you know, punishing criminals, but it all comes down to freedom of speech and privacy, and just like, you know, the old trope of like, you know, we fought for your freedom, and even if it's the freedom I don't agree with. You know what I mean? Like, you might want to scream the N-word and say F these people or whatever, and I don't agree with you, but I'm not going to silence you. I can't do that. I can't be a part of that or condone it in any way.
I hear that, Jim.
Facts.
Please let our show continue. You know, fuck big tech, but
Yeah,
let us get our rocks
because
off.
Yeah, they're coming to us eventually. You know what I mean? Like,
which is not quite big enough
quite
yet,
but they're gonna.
When they get word, they can be like, "Yo, have y'all heard about these tie-dye motherfuckers?"
That's why my advice is always like, get yours, man. Get yours out here, because they definitely gonna get
Everybody
theirs
else is
off of
getting
you.
theirs,
yeah. All right, man. We definitely appreciate your time, and we'll see you again in the next episode, man.
Peace.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber.